Thank you for joining us on this Friday global transmission. I'm Alex Jones. We're going to have a bifurcated transmission today with David Knight hosting the second half of the broadcast. I'm working on some big stories that need my attention directly and personally. Stories, pieces of information that will be very effective against the globalist in the fight to restore this republic to the rule of we the people. Again, thank you for joining us on this Friday worldwide broadcast. Donald Trump is set to speak any time. And so as soon as he gets up to the podium, I'm going to cut to some of that with his response to the horrible controversy that he's one of the birthers. Now, in hindsight, we know exactly what happened with the entire birther situation. It was a construct. We were all basically set up. Because the truth of who Barack Obama's father is 10 times worse than him not being born in the U.S. His father was Frank Marshall Davis. 100%. One of the top communist leaders in the United States. The real deal. Who was also a pornographer. And Obama admits in his book, Dreams of My Father, he writes more about Frank Marshall Davis than he does about the fake dad that looks nothing like him. So this is huge, ladies and gentlemen. This is absolutely huge that they're trying to resurrect this. It was Hillary and the Democrats that first floated it on the internet, her surrogates. She wouldn't even duck the question. She wouldn't even answer whether he was from the U.S. or not. And his entire history of the Harvard Law Review as the head of it, in publications, in intros to books, was I was born in Kenya. And so we're like, we've got all these things you wrote saying you were born in Kenya. Did you just say that to act more fashionable? To be cool, like it was really trendy? No, that was deliberately put out there so that people would then later pick up on that and not go see who his real daddy was. And then they put out that birth certificate that was in 6 layers. Within 2 hours of it being out, we blew up the so-called type font, and it was Microsoft Word typewriter font. It's a fake typewriter font, 100%. The I's, the T's, the O's, the C's, they were all the same. Each time you hit a keyboard, it's like another snowflake or another little droplet of water. Each one's different. And when you push your finger down and it slams the key up there onto the paper, it creates a new splat. Micro signature. 100% fake. And they even put it out in the layers of Photoshop to make us go crazy with it and go, oh my God. Because see, they know the public's ignorant. Public will just hear, the media saying we're crazy and that, we're saying the birth certificate's fake, while that just takes us off down another rabbit trail. And that's how they manipulate people. Just like when Hillary fell down Sunday, for 2 days, the controlled media wouldn't show her falling down. They would just show her kind of wobbling and say, she missed a step, big deal. What are you people freaking out about? The conspiracy theorists claim she fell down. Bunch of liars. That's how they misrepresent. It's the same deal. And so I don't know how Trump's going to respond. I'd double down and say, no, his daddy's Frank Marshall Davis, and just totally destroy the whole thing. I know Joel Gilbert's been getting his intel to Trump, but Trump probably knows the public just can't handle it. Truth is so much stranger than fiction. He admitted he spent summers with Frank Marshall Davis. This is incredible. It looks just like him. All right, this is what Donald Trump had to say today on the whole birther issue that Hillary hopes will revive her campaign by trying to discredit Trump. The Washington Post gives Trump 4 Pinocchios. I guess the maximum lie is 5 Pinocchios for claiming that Hillary started the birther controversy. This is the Washington Post that is run by the Democratic Party, basically. So I give you 5 million Pinocchios, Washington Post. I've lived the birther controversy. I know it up one side and down the other, okay? It's one of the few things that I don't want to say got suckered on, but it was a learning process about how they run dirty tricks and how they set up these honeypots, basically, these time bombs. And we've got Joel Gilbert coming on later today to recap who his real father is, Barack Hussein Obama, and why in the Harvard Law Review that he edited, that he was the head of, and why in all these, I mean, we're talking 10 or more publications, year after year, the forwards to books, you name it, that he was born in Kenya. And the dad didn't look like him. It was weird. They put out fake birth certificates in the Photoshop layers with the Photoshopped Microsoft fake typewriter fonts. I mean, it was the worst forgeries on the planet. This was something to absolutely get us off track, and then hiding in plain view in his book. They cut it out of the audiobook. He talks more about Frank Marshall Davis, his dad's best friend, his grandfather's best friend, and how he spent summers with him in his house. Then there's photos of Obama in the house on the exact same couch in the exact same room, where there's photos of his mother in lesbian sex scenes with Frank Marshall Davis funding the Communist Party with smut. And then it's like, oh my God, this is total CIA. Because of course, Barack's grandfather was CIA, his mother was CIA. This is admitted. And then you've got the local CIA chief, basically, clandestine, in Hawaii, running one of the top communists in the United States, Frank Marshall Davis. This is exactly what Senator Joseph McCarthy was so upset about, was he finally figured out, he goes, the CIA and the Army are basically running the Russians. Well, they'd been running them before that. Our government overthrew the Russian government in 1917. That's declassified. They've had congressional Frank Church committee hearings. Anthony Sutton got all the secret documents, top congressional archivist, wrote best-selling books with copies of the documents. Just like the robber barons created the UN, and the robber barons are funding radical Islam, and the robber barons are funding all these radical groups. Folks, look at George Soros today. He's just following the same old New World Order plan. And so what are they going to do when his real dad's Frank Marshall Davis? And it's in the film, Dreams of My Real Father. We sell it at InfoWarsStore.com. Most of you have already seen it. But this film is more important to me now than it was 4 years ago. Because it illustrates just how screwed up this country really is. You know, Obama is an American. He was born here, both American parents. One a black communist from Chicago, the other the daughter of a CIA high-level officer. And this is the type of stuff they do to our country. And it just mind boggles that Barack Obama's mother was a honey trap for the Central Intelligence Agency, a sex operative, and now her son is the president. I mean, you just cannot make this stuff up. All right, let me go ahead and play a clip of Trump addressing this. And I like how, in fact, I predicted it this morning because they were saying, oh, he's going to have a big speech about the birthing. And I said, watch. He's going to say, so they're talking to Pat Riley, we're working out. I said, you watch. He's just going to cover his own issues and then say at the end, it's Hillary that first brought this up, which is absolutely true and which is what happened. But she launched that controversy even knowing there was an even bigger cover story. And so she thought that would hurt Obama so she could get in. Shows how there's no honor among thieves. But when the Bilderberg group said, sit down and shut up, and they had that meeting in Chantilly, Virginia that we covered and no one else did, basically, then they became friends again. But that's what's happening. Now, let's go ahead and play the Trump clip.
Now, not to mention her in the same breath, but Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period. Now we all want to get back to making America strong and great again. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good job, Trump. What a leader. All right. We are so blessed to have him By the way, again, I'm not tooting my horn. I want listeners to understand, I'm not like other talk show hosts. I'm a leader in that, and I don't make that statement to brag. I make the statement to look at our successes so that others can build on them and be more successful than I am. Because that's what a leader does, is try to teach other people and try to make themselves better and try to really tell the truth. I mean, I was thinking this morning about the fact that I really research stuff and then really try to come on air and tell you exactly what's going on with the clearest picture we can develop. And that doesn't mean we have all the answers either. And it just hit me. Most people in media sit there and craft something they think sounds good, or they repeat something else that they think sounds good, or that they think is what the establishment wants to hear. And they're just not genuine. I don't engage in propaganda. I engage in being genuine, being real, really trying to get people thinking. And that's why we've been successful. And that's why Donald Trump has been successful. Here's an example of it, and then I'm going to get into the huge news today, and there's so much of it. Tim Kennedy was fighting for the championship of the light heavyweight, and he basically beat the guy, but the guy wouldn't come out of the corner at the end, and then got a bunch of punches in on him, and in a decision, they gave it to the other guy. Now, I don't really follow sports, and some people would say, well, Alex, you know, it's a paradox, or it's hypocritical that you criticize people that are obsessed with sports all day, but then here you are promoting Tim Kennedy in a fight at Madison Square Garden coming up 3 days after the election in New York City. So which is it? Well, if you actually listen to the body of what I say, it's not calculated, it's not crafted. When it is, I'll tell you. Like bringing up election fraud, that was calculated and crafted because I did a lot of thinking and researched it and knew that that's what they were going to try to do, and knew that if we didn't get out ahead of it, they would be able to do it. And Trump totally got that, and you've seen the results now. They're in big trouble. They're in free fall. And there's other things that I craft and develop. But those are few and far between. I really just come at things from a gut-level instinct, but also with well-researched information. And so a microcosm of that is the whole Tim Kennedy situation. When I say situation, I'm with the Pentagon, all of it, got a bunch of them pissed off, you name it. It's a microcosm because I've known him for years. I've known Shane Steiner, his training partner, since high school. And just organically, Shane ends up being on the show, never even asked to be. We go out and shooting. And just organically, Tim Kennedy ends up using our products and thinking they're better than anything he's ever used. And then he's going back, you know, into the UFC. And obviously, if he wins, especially, we'll have all those fans that are inside the Matrix, but that are folks that are, you know, still into Americana, a lot of men in America that haven't had their, you know what's cut off, coming to our show. So I didn't come at that as propaganda, like, ooh, I want someone to be my propaganda tool, and I want to go and get all these people, you know, for the show, and we're all calculating this. It just happens, you see. And people say, okay, well, then why are you promoting sports? Well, it's like saying, why are you on Facebook or why are you on Twitter when they censor you? Because that's where the fight is. But separately, I've already followed UFC. I've admitted it's one of the few sports I follow. And again, it's because of relationships. Getting to know Joe Rogan in like 1998 when he would come to town and was producing some comedy albums here, CDs, and we hit it off. And I've been friends with Joe for, you know, 16, 17, 18 years. I forget. And so he's gotten me hotel rooms and, you know, helped me come out and got me front row tickets to the UFC all over the country, Vegas, you name it, you know, Houston, Austin. So I kind of go check out the UFC, and it's interesting, and I like it. I'm not obsessed with it. And so then I know these other UFC people, and then they start using the products, and it just all symbiotically works. And I've always said, I think sports are great if your son or daughter are on the swim team or the football team or the volleyball team, or if you're competing in a sport and you're involved. I don't like the big, giant, mega NFL garbage with all these, messages and players protesting on 9/11 and bitching when they make $100 million and all this stuff. I mean, I'm just sick of the NFL. I'm going to skip this break. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. So that's a microcosm. I was thinking about talking about this morning, and I thought, I don't really engage in propaganda. I don't really calculate stuff. It just happens. 90% of the time, I'm not calculating anything. It just happens because it's meant to happen. But then from a propaganda perspective, Tim Kennedy's been one of the biggest promo pieces for the Pentagon. He's been like the biggest thing for the Pentagon and the Army when it comes to promoting what they do since Pat Tillman went bye-bye. And the military kind of sees people that they're using in propaganda as their property. And so Tim's a patriot. Tim really cares about the Constitution and Bill of Rights. He likes the show, has been listening for years. Most of his buddies in the military listen. It's just a good fit. And then I get these contacts from the Pentagon and CIA and you name it. I mean, real heavy hitters going, oh, people upstairs don't like what you're doing. Tim Kennedy's basically a property of the Army. And what are you doing? And what is he doing paramilitary training? Are you planning to overthrow the government? I mean, it's so ridiculous. Everyone knows I'm an information. I'm trying to wake up America so we can get people elected like Donald Trump, get our jobs back, take care of our veterans. I'm the one trying to stop a civil war. I'm the one that doesn't want a shooting war. I'm the one trying to stop that. And so then I get contacted by the CIA and by the Defense Department, all these people. This is like a month ago. And Tim was telling me yesterday, same thing happened to him. What are you and Jones planning to overthrow the government or something? I mean, it just shows how out of touch some of these old guys are. Man, I tell you, it's just crazy. I mean, if they understood propaganda and HUMET and force multiplication as much as they claim they did, they'd understand that it's genuineness that's going to save this country and that we don't need to pull any tricks or have any games, buddy, because it's just Americana. It is what it is. And they do not like the fact, I have nothing to do with sheepdog response, which is getting citizens trained to defend themselves from criminals, jihadis, you name it. It's not billed as training to take on the government. When Tim goes and trains police departments all over the country for free in sniper response, it just shows how upside down even people that are, quote, patriots in the government have Obama breathing down their neck about, well, we were going to leave Jones alone, but stuff like this, you better tell Jones he's crossing the line when you get involved in, training paramilitaries in the United States. Training paramilitaries, I haven't taken my son shooting but once in a year. Paramilitaries, this is a military action of the American people against outside globalist occupying forces. It's information warfare where we simply sit here and show Hillary Clinton falling down, and then the media is so evil and so despicable and so controlled and so embarrassing and so delusional and so in your own little bubble that they sit there and they put Hillary on TV and say, oh, she just misstepped at the curb. Cut the video when she falls on her face and has to be carried into the vehicle. You're the ones destroying yourselves, trying to sell a candidate like that. You're the ones that are disconnected. You're the ones that are dangerous. You're the ones sold us out to the communist Chinese and the EU and the globalists and everybody else. You're the problem, not us. Oh, but in between, I'm trying to raise a domestic army. Oh, and I love the latest Southern Poverty Law Center stories. A few months ago, they came out and said, Jones wants police to be killed. It's like hearing Hillary's speech today about how Trump's showing violence and evil, knowing Soros and the Ford Foundation have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. We know about $400 million the last 5 years. $400 million the last 5 years. $100 million more they gave 2 weeks ago to stir up and turn black people into chip-on-the-shoulder, racist, crazy people. So then white people will start flipping out and becoming racist. It's just a disaster. But they sit there and they engage in all this stuff. It is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. I'm supposed to just sit here and like work with the globalists and sell everybody out so we can sell baby parts and stuff. I mean, it's melt children down for women's cosmetics and have human-animal chimeras and thousands of pharmacological crops growing everywhere, and allergies are exploding so bad that people are dying from them now. Everybody I know has got allergies that didn't even exist 50 years ago, basically. I mean, we're screwed, man. And I'm here as a restorationist just trying to get a basic, somewhat free country back. So enough about Alex Jones. I want to get into the news now. But I covered all of that to be illustrative of just how my thought process works, how we do things. I mean, I love all these government people and globalists that sit there planning things forever. And then their best laid plans don't usually go so well. So they always, quote, change the plan and, quote, pivot or play both sides. That's a way of saying you're a soulless worm who's actually a giant failure, and you claim that you're controlling chaos. No, you just don't know how to bring true order. I love how you claim you want order all the time, but all you create is disorder. See, God already created order. You don't like that. You're trying to overthrow everything that's common sense. That's called being deviant. Deviant. I love the fake Christian church teaches people that if you think a woman's beautiful, that's the biggest sin, in the universe. No, that's something God instilled in us, to love each other, to be fruitful and multiply. Now, what's deviant is having, for 20 years, all over the U.S., corn crops growing with live HIV virus in it. I mean, look up Protogen. That's just one of thousands of crops. It's like, why are you doing that? Oh, because then they can extract the, quote, virus out of the corn and, quote, test vaccines. Well, what happens if it jumps into other corn, which all corn species do? Oh, yeah. And then, oh, we don't know why there's these autoimmune problems popping up everywhere. We're being totally hammered, people. And what's crazy is the globalists are susceptible to all the same stuff, but they just can't help it. They think they're immune. They lie to themselves about what they're doing. And I, for one, am tired of it. Now, coming up in the next segment, Daria, again, a great patriot, born in Russia, Army veteran. She watches the Russian television. So do I. It's very interesting, but I always have to read the subtitles just to see how the Russians are responding to all this insanity. Because you turn on the news now. I mean, it's worse and worse every day. Hillary officially says it. The Russians are going to steal the election for Trump. It doesn't matter if every poll shows him way ahead now. They just keep saying the Russians are going to steal it for Trump. And then they go around and say, with their surrogates and newspapers, that I'm a Russian agent. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Russian agent like I'm a avocado. In fact, I'd like to see Russia someday, but I better not. Because if I ever fly over there, they'll say, see, he's a Russian agent. He's working for him. Well, I do appreciate the fact that the Russians don't want carbon taxes. No, the truth is that, as I've said many times, Russia has the same globalist enemy we do. And they've had a former top diplomat come out, who's, by the way, a liberal, and said our government is insane. They want war with Russia. Hollywood is totally psychotic now and wants to bring down Russia because it's Christian. This is all an anti-Christian system. And this is coming from a liberal. This is coming from people that have never even been religious. They're just like, why are you so out to get the Christians? And Hollywood's like, because the globalists took over Russia and exterminated those people. Use it then as an engine of evil, ladies and gentlemen. Just like we've been hijacked as an engine of evil. But getting back to polls, I got a bunch of them, too. We're going to cover in the next segment. When I say I don't engage in propaganda, I just engage in truth. I mean, if Trump was really behind, I mean, he came out of the RNC with a 10 to 15-point lead, even with polls that were tilted somewhat against him, with who they were contacting in the demographics. I mean, I went and looked at the methodology. A week after they're panicking, Hillary's way behind. They'd always been delusional, just thought she could win. And so they start putting out fake polls that he's losing everywhere and admitting they're fake. adding 5, 10, 15 points of more Democrats into the sample. And I say, folks, this is to create an illusion he's losing. But I said he's now basically only a little bit ahead because the brainwashing almost worked. He's got to get more hardcore now and talk about election fraud. Trump did that. Now he's way up again, 10, 15-point lead in internal polls. They're talking like 5, 6, 10 points in swing states. It's way more than that. They are in panic, free fall right now, okay? But again, I explained all that. Even really smart conservative friends of mine didn't believe me when I said, no, listen, Trump's really still ahead a month ago. I didn't just say that wishful thinking. He's ahead the whole time, folks. The story's up on DrudgeReport.com. It's so sickening and ridiculous that I have trouble watching it, but we're going to play it. It's a classically luscious German blonde dressed up in basically a burqa, dancing around saying how great it is to submit to Islam in German, and it's produced by the United Nations UNESCO Fund and aired with the payment of the German government in association on German TV. And I told you, they're going to make us accept Islam. The mayor of London has said you're going to accept Islam. Because, see, they have a culture, we don't have one. First, our culture's removed, then the alien culture is put in because it's authoritarian. The New World Order loves Islam. Loves it. So we're going to be getting to that, and that dovetails with Flint, Michigan. City leaders not informed by feds of plan to send 100 Syrian and Iraqi refugees. That means Sunni invaders into the area that have been kicked out. Remember that. Whenever you hear that, that means jihadi forces that were defeated. So they're almost all male. White House goal of 40,000 additional refugees from Near East, South Asia. That means Muslims only. And they don't let anybody but Muslims in. That's the new rule. I'm sorry, 0.4% or 0.5% are Christian, even though they come from countries that are 20% Christian or were. We have a Western globalist policy of eradicating Christianity. That's not rhetoric. That's not a buzzword. It's happening. Attacks on Christians have been increasing logarithmically for the last decade, doubling every year. The UN even admits. And you've got Peter Sutherland, the founder of the European Union, running the UNESCO program. And we have the George Soros emails basically commanding him, hundreds of them now. Been writing articles, everybody's had them. We've covered it 50 times last month. If you're a new listener, go look it up where they're admitting we're, quote, bringing down Europe. We're going to use these groups to destabilize things. They'll then sit on top of these groups and control them. They flick a switch, they'll go burn down whatever they want. They can bring in a civil emergency like that. They've already got 4 different European countries under permanent civil emergency. That's called martial law. They never call it martial law. They call it civil emergency, the long emergency, while they bring in more and tell the pliant women that think the government's their God, their husband, you know, I don't need a man, I'm running the show. But, oh, the TV tells me I can get myself some Sunni invader. And you know what? The men in the West act so wimpy. A lot of time the women actually like it. A lot of Western women are going and, you know, wanting to get chained up and basically live in a cage because it's so much fun. Because, see, Daddy was so sweet to her and spoiled her so much. She saw Mommy boss Daddy around all day long, and it wasn't very fun. So now she's going to go find what she thinks is a man. It's the same psychological syndrome in criminology where you have these inner city youth, and it happens in poor white areas, black areas, Hispanic areas. It's sociology, it's psychology, it's history. And there's no daddy in the house because the government pays to make sure there's no daddy in the house or mama doesn't get the welfare. And so who's your father figure? Well, when you're 10 years old, it's a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old drug dealer that has you going around doing stuff for him. And then you get picked up and put in juvenile hall. And by the time you're 20 years old, you serve 2 or 3 years in the pen. And you get out and you're a criminal for the rest of your life because you think a man is some guy that robs liquor stores and sells crack on the street corner. And women think some guy walking around that doesn't even really have a job but backhands her occasionally and swaggers around. That's a real man right there because, you know, he watches the NFL and sits there and squats in front of TV dinners. But the little beta males all, oh, baby, how do I do you? What do I do for you, sweetie? I want to do everything I can. And you see these men, you can see the different types. You can see the trendy women that have their alpha male, but it's got to be a minority. Because you can't have an alpha male who's white. That's bad. That's the greatest evil. But they can have an alpha male if it's not a white person. But if it is a white person, the woman's got to have a little guy that walks behind him and holds their hand like a baby elephant holds its mommy's tail, and she tells him everything to do, and he behaves the way she wants because she's in charge, because that's an empowered woman. No, that's an enslaved woman. And that's social engineering, that's mind control, where the Germans won't even have kids. And I've got 3 clips in Paul's article of, like, let's just play that first, and I'll play the Russian TV clips. I've got all these clips of Parliament, you know, the Bundestag, the Reichstag, city councils, with the women and men getting up saying, we are pleased to announce the end of the white race, the end of the Germans within 30 years. Our program is going well, getting rid of ourselves. We are, and you're like, this is like a cult or something. And they're all smiling, good. Move forward with the plan, excellent. And you're just like, oh, what's going on here? This is diabolical, people. Kill the Christians, kill the white people. Meanwhile, the globalists are engaging in the most horrible stuff you can imagine in the third world, keeping them deindustrialized, oppressing them. TPP has slavery legalized in it, holding people captive in factories. But it's okay because Obama's black. I cannot believe this. So if you're a radio listener, I'll translate the German because it has subtitles. This is from the United Nations, paid for by German taxpayers, UNESCO. And remember, UNESCO is running the migrant program into Central and South America and Mexico and bringing them here. That's official. The UN runs it. The UN's running our police departments more and more under strong cities. It's happening. People say, that's ridiculous. The UN's a puppet of the US. No, it's not. The UN is a puppet of the robber barons that set it up to transfer our power to it. Paul Craig Roberts is a smart guy, but you get him on, he'll go, I know they say it's a UN program, but it's the neocons, it's the United States. Yes, I know that, Paul Craig Roberts. The point is the power is being transferred into the TPP, into the UN. I study it. I see the groups. I know the funding. This is UNESCO. They say the ad is produced by the United Nations. Now, the UN itself is a front for the IMF, the World Bank, the Exim Bank, the International Bank of Settlements, the OECD, the United Nations Cultural Educational Organization. The real UN is run like a Politburo with a central committee. And then everything else is just a debating club, but it's all vetoed by those central committees. And Obama has sat as the head of the UN Security Council while president. It was a big ceremony with Henry Kissinger in New York, and they were all just creamy-eyed over the treason they were involved in. And that's why Obama goes to Congress and says, I don't need your authority to launch wars. I have NATO. And what is NATO? It's the military arm of the Organization of Economic and Cooperative Development, which is overseeing our elections this year. That's Reuters. So let's go ahead and play TV ad encourages German women to wear hijabs. Here it is.
Ich auch. Ist doch hübsch. Enjoy difference, start tolerance.
And so she's wearing, you know, the Muslim garb, phasing it in slowly, makes it all look cute and fun. You know, it's like luring a kid into a car with a puppy or candy. Well, this is luring everybody in with a good-looking, you know, woman with kind of a cute little outfit, like it's a costume party or whatever. Not sexual mutilation, not women wearing total hoods over their heads, not women not allowed to have jobs or go to school or drive cars. But it's okay because it's liberal. It's liberal. She goes, enjoy difference, start tolerance. You need to be tolerant. You need to be tolerant, but not them. We're going to accept what they say we're going to do when they crap in the pool or rape your daughter or knife you to death, because that's what they do. Because these are the worst refugees from the Middle East, the poorest, most horrible Sunni invasion battlegrounds. Now, shifting gears, you tune into any major network, Fox, CNN, you name it. Fox is almost as bad nowadays as CNN or MSNBC. And it's all, the Russians are here, the Russians have hacked the computers, they're going to steal the election for Donald Trump. Oh, but he's way ahead in all the polls, even the fake polls. Why would they need to steal it right now? So the idea is the globalists, the George Soros groups, you know, the AP that actually runs the elections with Homeland Security, and the OECD sending 10 times the UN overseers they've ever sent over our elections, that's not an issue. No, no, no. But remember, 5 weeks ago, Obama said I was crazy, Trump was crazy. There was no such animal. There was no such situation. There was nothing going on. There was nothing happening. What is election fraud? It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Who are these crazy people? Trump comes out and says, okay, we're going to have a poll watchers. We're going to deal with this. It's a serious history of this, which everybody knows there is. And they go, oh, my gosh, it's true. The Russians are coming. They're going to get us. The Russians are going to hack all our... We're going to come in with Homeland Security and oversee all the major key battleground areas. We're going to have to plug our computers in and make sure everything's going quite well to protect you. Because here's the truth. The globalists have already taken over America. So again, they want to manipulate our nationalism and say, oh, it's the Russians. Manipulate our immune system to this takeover and then blame it on some foreign country that is politically reorganizing and poses an offensive threat to no one. That mainline analysts say that. That's not my opinion. So let's go now to a major Russian TV channel. This is nationwide on radio and TV. It's the state media. But they do have a lot of wide-ranging views and opinions there. And this is One Russia, one of Russia's most popular, prominent, and visible politicians, conservative nationalist Vladimir Zhirinovsky, roundly ridiculed Clinton on a major talk show, accusing her of being completely unfit to become president while praising Donald Trump. Here's the clip.
She just slipped. Nonsense. She didn't slip. Her brain switched off. Give me a break. They had to carry a presidential candidate to her van. What the heck? She sneezes, no big deal. She coughs, that's okay too. But she passed out in broad daylight, in the middle of her workday. A presidential candidate passes out. A person like that shouldn't even be allowed to manage a bathhouse, let alone run a country. Look, he's a good man, a kind man, a kind man. And look at her, Michael, you can confirm this. In America, they call her a witch. Hey, it's not me saying it. Americans say this. She's a witch. Look at her. We need Trump. Trump. That's what we have to fight for. Look at him. It will be a better world for Trump. For Trump. Come on, everyone. Vote Trump. Vote Trump. For Trump.
Now, that guy also leads...
Hillary is a vicious snake. She's a witch. She'll blow up the whole world.
And he leads the second largest political party in Russia that's growing very, very fast. He's a lot more saber-rattling and offensive in nature towards the world than Putin is. In fact, that's Putin's main opposition. I mean, I know they're, quote, friendly on the surface, but it's the Russian hardliners that Putin actually has to worry about, according to most of the analysts and we've talked to in research I've done. But you have to understand, Trump wants to end the sanctions. Trump wants to work with Russia to take out radical Islam. Meanwhile, the globalists are using radical Islam to attack Russia. And Russia is on the verge of collapse. But Putin has almost a 90% approval rating because Russians understand this. And even though they have a lot of austerity and a lot of problems, they've tightened their belts because they understand that they're under attack. Just like 20 million Russians died in World War II. So it's the same story over and over again. They understand what's going on. So it's a major educational process, and it's freaking the globalists out because their former enclave they controlled was social engineering. The place where the globalists could have their way with the Christians and murder and torture, do whatever they wanted, and export evil is now not completely in their hands, and they are in panic mode. Now England's leaving them with the Brexit. Now Hillary's in trouble. Here's Trump. Nationalism is rising. Common sense, the scourge of the common enemy of the New World Order. People are waking up worldwide. So they say Nigel Farage and UKIP work for Putin. I work for Putin. Trump does. No, we work for sovereignty and common sense and prosperity and freedom of religion and true liberalism. Nigel Farage started UKIP 25 years ago because the EU is a tyranny, like the old Soviet Union. He's fighting that. The EU's full of former communists and other globalists. Austin's been extremely humid the last few months with raining almost every day, and for some reason we can't keep the humidity out here. Kind of like the Democrats and their DNC were, always saying, sorry, we're having to mop ourselves here, but it's a little bit humid in here, so that's why I sometimes sweat a bit when I'm in here. Didn't never do that in the past, but I guess I'm just natured that way now. But it does show the times we're in that I'm actually physically heating up, I guess. But getting to this second clip, he says, she'll blow you all to kingdom come. Now, if it sounds frantic, they're in there debating in kind of like a Jerry Springer style, almost national news show. But instead of debating, how many people your mom cheats on your dad with or whatever, or how many baby mamas you got, or how much, liquor you drink, or whatever stupid topics they have on those talk shows, they're debating these type of issues, and he's one of the moderators in screaming matches with people. But let's go back to this clip.
Look, the fate of humanity is at stake. If a sick person has her finger on the button, what if she presses the wrong button? What happens to America then? Look, doctors from all over the world have confirmed this to me. Pneumonia is only a symptom of a much worse sickness she's suffering from. She didn't just catch a cold and get pneumonia. It's a symptom of some very serious diseases, of which she has several. She shouldn't be hiding this. She should tell the whole world the truth. She should undergo a full public physical examination. You guys are being way too kind to her. Too much sympathy. She'll press the nuclear button. She'll blow you to kingdom come. Trump will be much better. He'll be a historically great president. A head of state cannot be allowed to hide their health problems.
That's right.
Especially countries like America or Russia. It's one thing if it is some little country, but a nuclear power, a great power, and their president is sick? What if she has to decide to bomb or not to bomb? And at that moment she gets the shakes, she falls down, she passes out. Think what could happen to the world then. I tell you, her pneumonia is not the main disease. It's a secondary complication of something much, much worse. Besides, Clinton represents the past. It's a step backwards. It's obvious that if Trump wins, it will be a wonderful thing for America and for the whole world. A wonderful thing for all humanity. Here's why we need Hillary to have a full physical examination. Any chronic disease which can be cured will make the leader be nasty.
That's right. We'll be back,
vengeful.
ladies and gentlemen. And look, all that's true. This is nationalism rising. Well, we saw Hillary yesterday come out in public, and they played James Brown. I feel good. And then the reporter says, oh, well, she's doing good after she appeared to possibly have fallen last week. No, she fell down. She passed out. She had a seizure. Here's the clip.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Welcome to our viewers both in the United States and around the world. I'm Jake Tapper. Hillary Clinton wrapping up her first event after Sunday when she appeared to collapse at a 9/11 memorial ceremony. You can hear the subtle message there from her campaign, James Brown's I Feel Good.
I feel good. I don't dislike James Brown because he was super anti-white racist because he grew up around a lot of racism, so I could see back then being racist back. But it's just funny that if you want to get down to racism, James Brown said some incredibly racist stuff. He was also a wild man. I like his music personally, so I'll forgive him, hating honkies. But if you expand on all this, Jake Tapper saying she appeared to fall. No, she fell down. And then CNN would never show her actually falling down. You'd show her just starting to have the seizure. You people are a joke. You're despicable. It's scary to have media this controlled. This is like communist China or something. Now, I have another clip here. Heckler scream F Hillary. Now here's the deal. I'm not saying it's good to scream F Hillary, but you'd think this would be big national news when people in her own crowd are screaming F Hillary. Probably Bernie supporters. By the way, they have a national poll out. What is it, Rasmussen? The vast majority of Democrats want Bernie Sanders if Hillary drops out because they always wanted Sanders. oh, it's so surprising that the vast majority in a poll wanted Sanders, because that's who they always wanted, and they stole it. We'll talk about that poll here in a moment, but let's go ahead and play this bleeped F. Hillary piece.
People like me, we're lucky. When I'm under the weather, now, I just want to have a conversation, and other people can wave their arms and their signs, but I want you to think with me for a minute about how I certainly feel lucky. When I'm under the weather, I can afford to take a few.
Now, of course, it's come out that Hillary, with her new book, only sold 3,000 copies, with total promotion everywhere. I mean, I come out with a book, I sold 3,000 copies the first minute I plug it. Michael Savage sells 5 million books when he comes out with something. It shows the world she's in. No crowds, has to go to public events to have a crowd, where there's already a big group there at a rodeo or whatever, or a fair, but has all the big corporate backing, has all the big money, has all the big global political organizations, has the Pope, has the Saudi Arabians, has all these other groups, globalists, telling us what to do and telling us it's the end of the world if we elect Donald Trump. And then you look at her yesterday at that rally and the one today, she looks very frail. When she's walking downstairs, she's doddering. When she's going up the stairs in the plane, she's gripping it like she's my 90-year-old grandmother fighting for her life to walk. She's clearly ill. She clearly is debilitated. She's clearly on medication. We're going to end this hour. We're going to come back and do 5 more minutes, and we got a bunch of big guests today. So I got David Knight coming in. Roger Stone's got huge developments. We got Gary Byrne, the Secret Service agent, who said, look, something seriously wrong with Hillary. He's going to add to that. Joel Gilbert on this whole birther controversy and more today. Okay, I got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I'll be back this Sunday. I'll be hosting this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central with the Friday transmission. Please don't forget we're running a 20% off special on Super Male and Super Female Vitality. Again, that is 20% off. It's amazing cold press herbs. Extremely powerful. You heard Tim Kennedy talk about how great it is yesterday. And your purchase supports the broadcast. So check that out at InfoWarsLive.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. You are the tip of the spear. You're funding us. And thank you all for your support. We'll be back in 70 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now into hour number 2. Coming up, one of the bravest Secret Service agents out there who worked in the first Clinton administration, talking about the horrors, the abuse, the aggressiveness, the snake-like behavior of Hillary. He says something seriously wrong with her. It looks like she's got epilepsy. She's having convulsions. That's clear to even lay people. And obviously the cover-up has imploded. Donald Trump is way ahead in polls. The $64 trillion question is, how are they going to try to change this? Because in every major globalist organ, from the Financial Times of London to The Economist to the New York Times to the Washington Post, they say they must prop Hillary up or they are bust. Globalism, with Russia fighting it, with England fighting it, with the United States fighting it. And then the globalists sit there and go, England's run by the Russians, you're run by the Russians. The Russians are run by the same self-determination to not want to be run by special interest. That's what's happening. That's what's unfolding. That's what's going on. I want to cut some news pieces. I mean, you can call them political ads, but they're not really, but just informationals, where we explain TPP, secretly ratified, secretly being rammed through, globally, hands over control, show some of the subsections, all these other multinational corporations controlling the EU, controlling the UK, making upwards of 90% of its laws. You know, we've already been conquered. The Chinese government financing Hollywood, financing the media, financing politicians, telling us what films can come out, what can go on. We've already been conquered. So tell Hillary Clinton when she claims the Russians, Russia is falling apart. And I don't say that with pleasure. Russia has tried to build itself up and did to a certain extent and has now been under military-level sanctions and is now being militarily encircled and is just desperately trying to get the world, telling Germany and everybody else, stop it. Telling, stop. We don't want war. We don't want to spend stuff on weapons. Will you just let us have the Olympics? And so they attack Georgia and the Russian enclaves of South Ossetia and Abkhazia every time Russia tries to take the training wheels off. And I'm quite frankly sick of it. And I'm sick of how the globalists, just like they hate Russia, they hate us. They've shipped our jobs. They're attacking our families. They're dumbing us down. They've tripled our power prices. They're screwing us over. The New World Order hates Americans more than the Russians. We are loathed because we're seen as, in the past, a competition of the robber barons, competition to the EU, the proto-EU, the royalty of Europe, the centralized systems that have it all sewed up. It was in British newspapers for 100 years before Germany became the big enemy. When I say Britain, the great people in Britain, but the globalists, the oligarchs, the system that was there, where they called it the American problem. And we're in competition with the American system, and we can't compete. It's beating us. It's breaking up our monopolies because now it's a new power in the world and doesn't run things the way we do, where you got to have a special license to do anything, which allows elites to be in control and then kills commerce and kills competition. But while they were busy trying to suppress the United States and take the United States back over with British intelligence, which they did to a great extent with the Council on Foreign Relations, Germany started rising. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire, on the front of science, was conquering the world with free trade. And so the problem became the German problem. And the United States, basically, turning to Hillary Clinton here coughing, the United States basically then merged into the British Empire and took over the British Empire after World War II when it was faltering. And now we've got all these globalists that inherited this. They weren't the ones that were even able to build it or cook it up. I mean, I could hand it to Cecil Rhodes and others. They were some serious hombres. Now you've got a bunch of spoiled brats running around. They're obsessed with, transgender bathrooms or whatever as a distraction, trying to run this global empire, and they're still trying to mount the head of the republic on the wall in a pissing contest. I mean, these people are crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, from the front lines of the information war, I'm Alex Jones, here co-hosting with David Knight, who's going to take over for the next 2 hours and 50 minutes or so. I'm working on some big stories here behind the scenes. I'll be back this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central, live, hosting the transmission. David Knight is here with us. DrudgeReport.com has the top headline. In fact, will one of you guys bring me that headline, please? Actual print off of it, thank you. Where Trump trolls the media. And again, even before the Daily Caller wrote that headline, it's just we're all reporting on the same thing. It's why we all are saying the same thing. We're not even communicating with each other, but it's not even like pheromones. It's not like we're copying each other. We just see the same sunset, the same sunrise. We see the same tyranny. We see the same good things that are happening, the bad things. We're living on the same world. And I predicted this morning, I said, look, he's going to get up there and cover other issues because he knows the media keeps ignoring his full speeches while they're waiting for him to respond to a controversy. And then he just does 30 seconds at the end that we'll play here in a few minutes. I want to play that again, where he trolls the media, and his response is absolute gold, where he just says, she's the one that first brought it up, which her surrogates did. Yeah. And so now it's moved on, and we went and researched it. I wanted to know, okay, he's born in America. And the truth is, and I know people that have talked to Trump, I never brought this up to him, but people like Jerome Corsi, that we all got snookered when he said in his Harvard Law Review that it was the editor of the Journal. I was born in Kenya. 3 years running, he wrote it in his little bio. I was born in Kenya. Yeah. Not a typo. Wasn't where, an I wasn't dotted or a T wasn't crossed. It was, and all his other literature and the forwards to books, and his wife in 2007, and we can play the speeches saying he was born in Kenya. I mean, so we're like, hey, you say he's born in Kenya. You put out a fake birth certificate in 6 layers on purpose, with the Microsoft fake typewriter font, which we know is fake because each typewriter, splat is different. These were all identical. And we went, oh, my God, it's Frank Marshall Davis. And so Joel Gilbert's coming up to recap who Obama's real father is. It's been discovered. He admits he lived with him in the summers, the famous communist pornographer. I mean, Obama admits he lived with him. And then the book, Dreams of My Father, it's all about Frank. He calls him Frank, never Frank Marshall Davis. And there's photos of him in the house on the couch where his mom shot porn as a CIA honeypot. You cannot make this stuff up. And then they got her daddy, high-level CIA, probably the section chief, over Frank, his, quote, best friend, who's really running the communists in the U.S. Exactly what the KGB files, when they got released, proved that McCarthy was absolutely on target. So this is wild, just like the CIA's been caught running the jihadist. We're not saying the globalists or communists. We're saying they use these authoritarian ideologies to get their dirty work done. David Knight, what do you make of this epic trolling by Donald Trump?
Well, you know, Alex, when you're talking about how he used us by putting out this information that he's coming from Kenya and that sort of thing, I think that's the key thing. What was even more important was not where he was coming from, but who he was. And that's what he was able to do, was to keep us from really vetting him. It was really an issue, Alex, of transparency. Just like Hillary Clinton, it's all about the transparency. And so, you know, he puts this stuff out. He hides his college records. He hides all these other issues and does this end around so that we don't really look at who he is. And quite frankly, what he wanted to do, and I think... you
got to admit it's genius, though.
Yeah.
He says in all his publications he's born in Kenya. We're like, here he is in the Harvard Review. I mean, they were trolling us. Well, now Trump's trolling them.
He didn't have any real qualifications. I mean, he was a community organizer before he became a senator. Just like Hillary Clinton, it's like, vote for me, I'll be the first black president.
And they're all out of Chicago.
Right. And so he wanted to emphasize his credentials as a black man. And he wasn't good enough for him to have a black father from Chicago because he had a white mother.
No, it's really sexy that it's Kenya.
Yeah, so
one problem. That guy looked nothing like Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. But again, it's also the transparency and what we saw with the birth certificate, as you mentioned, layers with Photoshop, anachronisms in the text itself, the terms that they use.
That didn't exist at the time.
Right. Multiple fonts.
On purpose to troll us.
Exactly.
Because they know as a more intellectual audience, we're going to see this and prove it. But the whole thing's fake, so they're laughing at us. The general public doesn't know that a pterodactyl was, hasn't lived in 50 million years or whatever. So they believe the Trumps are hunting pterodactyls. I mean, you understand, they're targeting an audience that they know is dumber than a box of rocks.
And so even when you see Hillary Clinton collapsing, physically having to be supported by the people around.
And they're so arrogant. They're so arrogant. They just don't show the collapse.
Yeah. And then the media supporting her in that way, all those ways, and then still saying her health concerns are a conspiracy theory. I guess they're going to start calling us coughers or strokers or
pickle jar people. Well, I mean, even Jimmy Kimmel had to come out and say, okay, the pickle jar did pop. Alex is right. And okay, we were proven wrong. I mean, he did say, okay, she's obviously super sick. I mean, you look at her. She was in a hospital for brain tumors. That's what they specialize in for a year. And I've talked to my sources, and they say, no, it's metastasized. She's dead. She knows, and I don't take any pleasure in that, she has cancer. Okay, and we have this from high sources. I'm going to just stop right there because it gets into medical records and stuff, and nobody's giving me medical records. I've just been told. I mean, look, we met with the Secret Service. They told us she's falling down every 15, 20 minutes. She's got some type of epileptic problem. They don't know what it is. Okay? We got the Secret Service agent, I think it's coming up at the bottom of the hour, but and he says something seriously wrong with her as well. But again, it's emblematic of the collapse of the mainstream media that they're doing everything they can to prop her up, and it's not working.
It's funny. They keep calling us conspiracy theorists. And so you have the Washington Post go in and going into all kinds of detail like, what's this going to mean, the fact that she's got pneumonia? She doesn't have non-contagious bacterial pneumonia.
By the way, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, he said, you won't find a code for that. And he put out some codes for some really esoteric weird
because
stuff.
They wrote that after people said, oh, she touched the girl. So, oh, now it's non-contagious bacterial.
Yeah. But at the same time, Alex, that this is how they can't sustain their ridiculous lies, just like with Benghazi. It's the same pattern that we're seeing here. That's the real story, even more so than the health episode that she had on September 11th, because they put this out and saying she's got non-contagious bacterial pneumonia, and at the same time they say all of her staff got it too. So how did Hillary get it is what the doctor asked. How did he get it if she get it if it's not contagious?
Well, let's expand on that.
Pneumonia.
Let's expand on that. She's been coughing for years.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
She's clearly has problems walking. This is not pneumonia.
No.
Now, I want to play the clip since I mentioned it of Trump trolling. He spoke for 30 minutes, got all these endorsements. I noticed all these guys with Congressional Medal of Honor, coming in. And then, boom, Trump talks about all the real issues, cuts to the media baloney, and then is able to then put the whole birther thing to rest.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, I don't want to say we got deceived. I mean, we just kept saying, he said he's from Kenya. His wife says it. We have all the video clips. The Harvard Journal he edited, forwards to books, letters he wrote, parties he put on. It's all over his letterhead. I'm from Kenya. My dad I was born in Kenya. He trolled us, okay? But it isn't that we're bad. Clearly, he was saying he was from Kenya. He was changing his story. But now we know he was covering up Frank Marshall Davis.
Yeah.
But then he's so arrogant. He talks about him, how much he loved him, and spending summers with him, and his grandfather being his best friend. This is his father. We have his mother on the couch, the same photos he's taken of Obama on the couch shooting lesbian porn, you know, Betty Page style. I mean,
Here's
so
the good thing, Alex. They tried to get Trump off a message. He's been rolling over them. She's literally on the ropes, on the floor of the mat because of economic issues. This whole week has been a huge, as she has been collapsing with the health issues. He's been on a roll with all these economic issues, helped by the timing of this announcement from Ford that they're going to be opening a massive $1.6 billion plant with 2,800 jobs. They're going to open that in Mexico, underscoring everything that he's saying. And so he's taken.
And by the way, I'm not going to buy any more Fords if they do that. I've bought Fords.
Yeah.
And they've gotten better over the years. I mean, I like their body styles. I mean, obviously, not as good as a Japanese car. In my view, German cars break down more than Fords. I've experienced that, you know, with a Passat years ago, where the thing was like 3 years old and everything like caught on fire. But the point I'm not bashing German cars. The point is, I think Ford's got great cars. I love the new Mustang. I was thinking about getting one. They're a beautiful car. I just love the body. I'm in love with it. But I'm telling you, I'm not getting one. I mean, I've got a Ford F-150 truck. I've got another Ford vehicle that we use for the kids. And I'm really getting pissed off. Can we just have some car factories here? Can we have some American jobs? Let's play Trump trolling. Here it is.
Now, not to mention her in the same breath, but Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period. Now we all want to get back to making America strong and great again. Thank you.
The Rothschild model for 300 years is to fund all sides of a major war and consolidate control. That's in the history books. It's admitted fact. Globalism is the British Empire Rothschild model written globally and even headed up to a great extent by the Rothschilds. I mean, they're still quarterbacking, you know, right in the center of the whole deal. And this is Russia. This is the U.S. This is Latin American, African countries, Asian countries, the Brexit saying we're done. We're done all being exploited, all being held down, all having wars with each other. We'll still need a military. We'll still have troops. China's the big threat. The generals are all telling Trump that. Absolutely. We need a military. That's fine. Okay, there'll still be the military jobs. I get it. America needs to have a strong military. If we're promoting freedom worldwide and not globalism. Actually, I don't want us to have a big military if we're globalist. And so this is détente. This is a new renaissance. This is so beautiful. And it's why super hardcore right-wing, Russians are like in love with Trump, not because he's an agent, but because he literally wants to try to build a better new future. And if the hardliners that want all the military spending in Russia are ready to stand down if Trump gets in, this is a very, very positive situation. David, I'm going to have you take over when we come back. Great job. Listeners, speaking of Made in America, this broadcast is Made in America. And we fund it with the support with you purchasing the products at InfoWarsLife.com. 20% off of Super Male Vitality and Female Vitality right now. This is the house you built. We need your support now more than ever in this critical fight. Amazing products from the BioTruth Selenium to Brain Force to X2 Survival Shield to super high quality storable foods to bone and joint formula. 50% off right now and Make America Free Again, Made in America hats, and so much more at InfoWarsStore.com or call toll free 888-253-3139.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host, and joining us right now is Gary J. Byrne. He's a former Secret Service agent. As a matter of fact, he was a Secret Service agent for 29 years, 12 of those from 1991 to 2003. He was guarding the Clintons. And we have his book here, Crisis of Character. If you look on the back, it says, posted directly outside President Clinton's Oval Office, former Secret Service uniformed officer Gary Byrne reveals what he observed of the character and culture inside the Clinton White House while protecting the first family. Now that a second Clinton administration is a possibility, Byrne exposes what he saw of the real Hillary Clinton. And of course, I think this book, as we look at this crisis of character, I think, Mr. Byrne, that is really the thing that we should all be concerned about so much. We've had so much talk this last week about health issues, and we had an article earlier this week at Infowars.com where you said that these health issues are not anything new. You pointed out at the time there is something seriously wrong with Hillary Clinton. Let's talk about that first, but then I really want to focus on the essence of your book, The Crisis of Character. because that is another deep sickness that we have all witnessed of Hillary Clinton. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
Now, tell me, you were guarding the Clintons real quickly for 12 years. You were there as a Secret Service agent for 29. What other administrations did you cover?
Yeah, I was in the Uniform Division for 12 years. I protected the Clintons the 8 years they were there. And I started with George Herbert Walker Bush, Papa Bush. And then when I left in 2003, George W. Bush was president.
Okay.
So I like to say I came in with Papa Bush and I left with son Bush.
And now you're there protecting these people with your life, okay?
Yes, sure.
How did she show her appreciation for you?
She did not.
Yeah.
Mrs. Clinton was very distant, cold. Many examples I cite in my book, Crisis of Character, where she berates people. She personally berated me a couple of times. I talk about one of those funniest ones, and I say funny because it never affected me. I didn't care what she said to me because, to me, watching her, the way she tried to supervise and manage and people, and the way she walked around like she was a dictator, I just thought was comical.
What did she do? You say she personally berated you. What did she do?
She once stood there in front of me, and she's about 5'5". I'm about 6'2", and she stood very close to me, pointing a finger at me and calling me, referring to me as an a-hole, and the whole Uniform Division were a bunch of a-holes, and they should have fired them years ago, and because there's something she wanted to do. Now this falls right into place with what we've seen with this email server.
Mm-hmm.
What she wanted to do was against the rules, against the law, national security rules that were set up as far as the Oval Office went, and as far as letting tourists in there. She wanted to do something. She wasn't allowed to do it. I told her she couldn't do it, and she insisted on it. In other words, that falls right into what we see with this email server. I'm Hillary Clinton. I don't have to follow the rules that everybody else has to follow.
Yeah.
So now she had her staff running around behind her, crushing blackberries with a hammer. I mean, how bizarre is that? And anything I've seen happen with her since I stopped protecting them, none of it surprises me because I've seen similar things. And one of them is that time where she berated me because she couldn't leave 30 women standing in the Oval Office unescorted with nobody in there.
See, that's the thing, is the fact that she doesn't think the rules apply to her. And quite frankly, she's right. She's right, isn't she? Because she gets away with this all the time.
You're right. And it's a sin.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to one of the reasons I wrote my book, Crisis of Character. There's two sets of rules: the rules for Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, and the rules for everybody else. The rules for Bill Clinton, he can do whatever he wants to any woman and gets away with it. They've accused him of assault, rape. If a woman, somebody you knew, walked into a police station, showed a police detective a picture of somebody and told him any of those stories that Bill Clinton's have been accused of doing, they would go and open an investigation and find that person. But because it's Bill Clinton, he gets away with it. And that's
the thing that is so dangerous for our country. The fact that we would accept that people who become president or any office, but president especially, that they would not be subject to rules, to regulations, to laws, that they would essentially be, that we'd be electing every 4 years some kind of a tyrant or a dictator who basically says, I'm going to write these executive orders, the law is in my mouth, that's a dictator, or the fact that no laws can touch them. That is going to destroy this republic if we allow that kind of behavior to continue. That's the real essence of this character crisis that we see. And when we see Hillary Clinton coming out and making these accusations now against Donald Trump's supporters, saying they're just a basket of deplorables, you have to understand that when somebody thinks they can do anything they wish to you and get away with it, and of course we've seen Obama target the Tea Party using the IRS, doing it openly, okay? Nixon was impeached for that. That's the way it should have been handled. We cannot tolerate this kind of corruption. Stay with us. Going to be right back with Gary Byrne. His book is Crisis of Character. He was a veteran Secret Service officer. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gary Byrne. He is a veteran Secret Service officer. He spent 12 years posted outside the Oval Office of Bill Clinton. And I wonder if he had to wear a hazmat suit when he went inside. That is a strange duty. But his book is Crisis of Character. And earlier in this week, he made a comment that something was seriously wrong with Hillary Clinton's health, not just with her character, but with her health. And so we want to talk to Mr. Byrne about what he saw there, how he was treated, what he observed about her character, and also what he observed about her health. I don't believe, And nobody who has watched this for very long believes that this is something that just happened over the last weekend. We had emails that came out from Colin Powell last week, or a year and a half ago. He was talking about how sick she was, how she had to be carried up the steps. Mr. Byrne, is that what the type of thing that you saw when you were a Secret Service agent at the Clinton White House? Did you see things when you said that you think there's something seriously wrong with her? Is that based on what you've seen recently, or is that based on things that you saw in the White House?
Just what I've seen recently. When I worked at the White House, when I protected them the 8 years her husband was president, actually, she came across as pretty healthy. She used to exercise, walk, that kind of thing. What really disturbed me recently is that video clip we saw. That, the truth is nobody would have seen that if it wasn't for that one person with a cell phone camera. Once again, they're trying to hide something else.
Yeah, and the reason they wouldn't see it is because the mainstream media covers that up. We've had that type of thing covered up with the mainstream media. They have literally, she was literally being propped up there, but the mainstream media has been metaphorically propping her up for a very long time, concealing any issues, putting them down, as we always see. Whenever you investigate anything that they don't like, they call you either a racist or a conspiracy theorist. And so that's what we've seen in this particular case. You're a conspiracy theorist if you see the obvious there. Let me ask you about this unusual man that we've seen following Hillary Clinton around. There was a tall black man who came over to her at one point in time where she seemed to get flustered with everybody protesting her at a rally. And he leaned over and touched her, took her by the arm and said, just say this or that. And she was seemed like she froze on the stage. And then eventually he came back to her and said something again. And then she repeated exactly what he had to say. And so everybody was saying, who is this mystery man? Is he somebody who is a caretaker? And we'd seen pictures of him not wearing a suit, just dressed in a kind of a plaid shirt, that type of thing, for quite some time. We'd seen pictures of him helping her up the stairs. So there was a lot of question about that. Now, Paul Joseph Watson did some investigation, believes that this man is a Secret Service agent. But let me ask you that. Isn't that an odd way for Secret Service agents to conduct themselves?
Yeah. And now, the video clip that you just showed, is it possible to bring that back up again? Because I can kind of help you with it.
Yeah, let's pull that back up again. Okay.
Okay.
Right
can you stop it right there?
Stop right there.
Okay. Do you see the pin on his lapel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now start the video again and look at the pin on the lapel of the other guy when he comes into the frame.
Okay. Keep going, guys.
The agents, yeah.
Okay. Now let the other guy come in the frame.
Yeah,
okay.
Let it go.
Okay.
Okay. Do they look the same to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. If they're the same, then they're both Secret Service.
Okay.
The Asian man you see in the front, and the guy behind him, they're definitely Secret Service agents.
Mm-hmm.
If that guy's wearing a pin, then he's a Secret Service agent. Now, it is possible that he's got some special medical training, but what you see there, they saw something in the crowd. He's not sure that's going to be an issue, but he's covering his bases. He got up there just in case whoever's in the crowd comes forward. Everything, basically what he was probably saying to Mrs. Clinton was, it's okay, continue on, we've taken care of it.
And so that's what Watson had said, was he said that did the investigation, said, yeah, he's a Secret Service agent. But nevertheless, isn't the behavior odd that he would, touch her like that and that he would coach her like that? And we've seen other pictures of him just dressed casually in a plaid suit, plaid shirt. Those are the types of things that made people question really what his true function was. Right.
So what I see there, I would be honest with you, is still kind of typical Secret Service behavior.
Oh, okay.
This is the agent that works with her all the time. He clearly does have a decent rapport with her, and the reason he touches her on the elbow is just, listen, we see what you see. You're fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no fan of Mrs. Clinton, certainly, and I'm no fan of her politics. But when it comes to protecting them, I have to kind of come down on the side of the Secret Service. What that guy did was correct. He's trying to reinforce to her that whatever it is that they both see, that she's safe.
Okay, all right, that's good. And that's what Watson pointed out in his video. There's enough stuff to talk about that we don't need to go too far. I mean, there really is stuff here. We don't want to push this farther than it really is. So when we're talking about what you saw again at the White House, and I'm absolutely amazed at the account that you gave in the last segment and other things that are in your book. about how they would berate people in the White House, berate especially the staff like you that were tasked with protecting their lives. I mean, if I was in that position and I knew that my life was in danger on a daily basis and I had people there that were going to take a bullet for me, I mean, I'd be buying you guys, boxes of chocolate all the time, other things. And I would at least be incredibly kind to you whenever I saw you, and I would appreciate that. I genuinely would appreciate it. But I mean, even if you didn't appreciate it, the smart thing would be to act like you appreciate it. But she dropped all pretense about doing that, didn't she?
Yes. And the thing you have to remember, if you go back to all the stories and rumors we heard about Bill and Hillary Clinton when they lived in Arkansas, when he was Attorney General, when he was the governor, and when he started running for the office of presidency, their spin machine, the Clinton machine, oh, no, that's just Arkansas politics. None of it's true. It was all true. Mm-hmm. They're very angry. She's especially very angry. All the stories about her having these fights in the governor's mansion in Arkansas and throwing stuff at him, we saw it come to fruition at the White House. And, as I tell in my book, Crisis of Character, she had some of her co-workers that worked for her in the East Wing. These were women that worked with her in Arkansas. One of them worked with her at the Rose Law Firm. She was so terrified of Mrs. Clinton to tell Mrs. Clinton that a mistake had been made with some stationery that because she knew what would happen. Mrs. Clinton would fly off the handle like she normally does, berate everybody that she thought was involved, and then demand somebody's fired. That's not what a leader does. Yeah. A leader finds out what the problem is, gets it fixed, and then moves forward. That's not what I've never seen anything that would remotely convince me that she's a leader.
That's interesting because just recently we've had a couple of FBI agents who came forward who investigated the Vince Foster death, and they said that they were talking about their research that they said they thought had disappeared from the National Archives. Now, some people who believe that Vince Foster was murdered said, well, they were never in the archives. Whether he was murdered or whether he committed suicide, as we point out, the real key thing, I think, is the fact that the body was obviously moved. Wherever he died, the body was obviously moved, and there was a lot of very suspicious things about the way the body was found, the way the investigation was shut down. And so in many of these cases, just like we were talking about the birth certificate situation, it was far more important as to the transparency and the process that Obama went through with this, far more important to vet the man and who he was than exactly where he was born. And I say this as somebody that believes that you need to be a natural born citizen. You need to be born in the United States with two parents who are both American citizens. So I'm not talking about the constitutional issues, but I'm talking about these other issues and the way they continually try to move this around. Now, when this whole thing about Vince Foster, the narrative as to whether or not he committed suicide, what they're trying to put out there is to say that she drove him to suicide because she berated him so heavily in front of the staff. But from what you're saying, that's not really even that unusual a circumstance for Hillary Clinton, is it? Or is it for somebody of his stature?
No, it's not. There were many stories, and I talk about it in my book, where Vince was berated. I know one personally, and then one day when I came into work, one of my coworkers had told me that it had just happened, and that she had berated him fiercely in front of other people because of something. And the thing about, listen, I'm not saying that the way she treated everybody like crap. Mm-hmm. And that's the honest truth. And the thing about Vince, in hindsight, was a damaged human being. He had a lot of issues. And he clearly had depression. We found out later on. But if the Clintons, my thing about this is they had to know about his issues. She worked with him for years, but she still treated him like crap. Now, I don't know why he took his own life. Mm-hmm. I do believe he did, but I do see what other people see in the investigation. I am very suspicious about a man's found, laying in a park and his suit's covered in carpet fibers, and I also talk about in my book where when the Metropolitan Police Department went to test fire the revolver that he supposedly took his life with, it didn't work the first time. The revolver they had to turn the cylinder back onto the shaft. Now, I have some firearms knowledge, and this old revolver, it is absolutely possible that the last round that he fired that took his life backed that off just a little bit. We're talking about a very old gun that was made with some, less than great procedures at the time.
Sure.
It is possible that happened, but
the issue is that there was blood coming out of his mouth that went up But he was laying on an inclined berm. There were no bullets ever found in the area. The bottoms of his shoes were completely clean. He had carpet fibers all over him.
Yeah.
On and on. And then the other people that saw suspicious people with Arkansas license plates. So there's a lot of issues there, and we've talked about that. We talked about that with Roger Stone. But I guess the key thing is that, like the email scandal, Hillary Clinton was very, very concerned that once this was found out, that his office was going to be searched. And as you point out, she'd known him for quite a long time, going back to Arkansas, to the Rose Law Firm, where they were partners, and perhaps more than one way. But, this was... this is something that went back a very long time. She did not want an investigation. This is just 6 months into the Clinton administration, and this is when we had all these different things like the cattle futures issues, Whitewater investigations were going on. There was one scandal after the other that was erupting like, William Jefferson Clinton's women, but there were all these scandals that were focused around her. That was the amazing thing at the time. So we see this pattern where she will constantly spin and cover up and do anything to destroy evidence, and the rules do not apply to her. As you point out, that was the key thing that would really set her off against you, right, was that the rules don't apply to Hillary Clinton.
Correct.
And I think that's the thing that so many people are very, very concerned about, even as William Binney, who was a former NSA technical head, he said, I believe that it's very likely that these leaks or other information are coming from people who are within the NSA, that their lives have been endangered. They're very concerned that their lives will be endangered in the future. And they're also very upset about the fact, everybody that I talked to, I've talked to retired military friends of mine who say, hey, I would be in jail for the rest of my life if I only did a fraction of what Hillary Clinton did with the with the emails. And yet, for some reason, explain to us, Gary, if you can, if you've got an idea. Why is it that people who follow her just don't seem to care? And I'm talking about the grassroots, rank-and-file Democrat voters. They just don't seem to care about this. Talk to them and tell them why they should care about this. I think did we just lose him? Oh, I think we lost the transmission. It froze. See if you guys can, that was a real cliffhanger. Okay, did it? Is it still? I saw his head just moving.
Behave. What I describe in my book,
good.
Crisis of Character.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, we're back. Your transmission froze there for just a second. Talk to people on the left, people who are loyal Democrats, and tell them why it matters that you are under the law, that you have character that says that I'm going to obey the rules. I'm not going to be above the rules.
Right. Unless you're somebody who's a hardened, lifelong criminal, you would not accept this behavior in anywhere else in your life. If you walked into the shop, the mechanic shop of the guy who works on your car, the car that you drive your kids around in, and you saw this guy treating his employees like Mrs. Clinton treats her employees, the berating, the yelling, the screaming, you would grab your car and you would get out of there. You would never let him work on your car again. You don't let the people in your life behave like that.
Or just a restaurant. Imagine you're in a restaurant and you see the guy come, slapping people around in the kitchen and throwing stuff in the kitchen at people.
Right.
You would get out of there quickly.
Right. So. If you found out that the guy that did your taxes had been accused of having a server that was accessed with all your private information on it to everybody else, anybody else that can hack into it, if he didn't use the proper procedures, you would pull your accounts and take them somewhere else. So why do you accept this from your government, from the Clintons? There's one thing I wanted to make clear here, is that anytime you hear them say anything, do not believe it. Do your own research, because they lie about everything. Even when they don't have to lie, they lie. And they tell so many lies they can't even keep track of them. Just the other day, her husband's trying to cover for her medical issue, and he's telling everybody she had the flu when it's already been said that she had pneumonia.
Yeah, even when the truth would serve her better, she will make up a lie because she's a pathological liar. Absolutely true. It is very amazing. That I think is the core thing. It really is the character. And I have to say to people who are blindly partisan that there is nothing more dangerous. And I think one of the things that they're concerned about, because they have accepted that Barack Obama can operate as a dictator, they believe that a Republican coming in, whether it's Trump or whether it's somebody else, they must be opposed because in their mind, they already see the office of presidency as a dictatorship. I think we can do better than that in America. I think we need to start demanding that we're going to have these people follow the law or they should get impeached. And I'm very disappointed that Congress hasn't gone down that road. And again, going back to the Clintons, it was because they went down that road and they were hammered by the press for doing that. We have a very different media environment today. If they would do the right thing, there would be a lot of media like InfoWars and others who would support them in this. The American people support that. The American people don't want to see crooks, criminals, and tyrants in office. And the American people, I think, would support them, unlike what happened when they impeached Bill Clinton. Because at that point in time, there was a lock by the mainstream media. The same people you see metaphorically propping Clinton up this whole week.
They loved him. Listen, that guy could do no wrong in their eyes. But here's the question I want to ask the mainstream media. If that was your daughter, if your daughter, your 30-year-old daughter came home and said, hey, the vice president of ABC Manufacturing where I work did X, Y, and Z and told you the same story that these other women told about Bill Clinton, would you say, oh, well, that's okay, sure? No, you'd be livid. And you would insist that she report him and go and contact the police. But because it's Bill Clinton, the charming politician, he can do whatever he wants.
And that's the key thing. You know, we talked about what Hillary Clinton said to you in the hallway, the way she treated people in the hallway. But you were posted outside the Oval Office for Bill Clinton. I mean, talk to people on a visceral level about what it felt like to see what the women that were coming in after they came out of the Oval Office. Talk to people about how that felt to you as an individual.
Sure. Well, two things I want to impress upon people. First of all, it was incredible to work there. To be posted outside the Oval Office as a Secret Service Uniform Division office, it was incredible.
You know, hang on there, Mr. Byrne. We got to take a break, and we're going to get that answer from you as to what it was like to be posted outside the Oval Office. We're going to get that from you when we come back. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to author Gary Byrne. But before he was an author, he was a Secret Service agent. He is a former Secret Service agent. He served 29 years for the Secret Service. 12 of those years, he was guarding the Clinton first family. He wrote a book called Crisis of Character. That's the true sickness of Hillary Clinton, the one that's been there far longer than she got physically sick, and that's her character. Now, just as we were going to the break, I asked him the key question about what it was like to be stationed outside the Oval Office of Bill Clinton during those years. As he said earlier in the segment, he said, imagine if it was your daughter that Bill Clinton was doing these things to. Okay, been accused of multiple women, of sexual attacks, of rape, other issues. We're going to go back and I'm going to get his answer, but real quickly. Remember that we have extended our sales on InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. 30 to 40% off, a massive sale. Now is the time to stock up on super high quality storable food for you and your family. Food quality that you can trust. And all InfoWars Select Foods have a shelf life of 25 years and are made in the USA. There's a reason that FEMA reports predict up to a 395% increase in food prices that could trigger massive unrest. Prepare now. Take advantage of this sale. It's not going to last much longer. We've already extended this once. 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. Mr. Byrne, in the time that we've got left, this is our last segment. Tell us, I could tell that it upset you, obviously, what you were seeing happening with the women and with Bill Clinton in the Oval Office. Talk to us about your personal feelings about that at a visceral level.
Sure. You know, I loved working there. I loved my job, but you know, these things that you saw going on, and with the intern Monica Lewinsky, and then of course the story I tell about Eleanor Mondale and all the other things. You know, my thing is, I get it that my morals are different than other people's, and clearly Bill Clinton's moral compass is off kilter. But you know, the reason he was supposed to be there, you know, he ran on all these great promises, and a lot of people believed in him, and then he basically continued to behave like this child, as high school senior, you know, who on senior week, where he just continuously seemed to pursue women and a self-indulgent
hedonist, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the thing was, you know, in hindsight, when you look back at the things, just for instance, the incident in Somalia that we now refer to as Black Hawk Down. I mean, could he have done a better job of making decisions if he wasn't so distracted with all these bizarre things. I'm not saying a president needs to be chained to the desk 24/7, but that's really what the job is.
Well, and then, of course, we had the bombing strikes that were done to cover up the Monica Lewinsky schedule revelation, and they started when that broke, and as soon as the House came out with their articles of impeachment, it stopped. I mean, it was clearly to direct attention away. So you go bomb a country to cover up your affair. Many people in the Democrat Party, many that I've talked to that are hardcore Democrats, see it as a badge of honor that this guy is some kind of Lothario, okay?
Yes.
They don't look at the women that were sexually assaulted, the non-consensual stuff, the rapes that have been exposed and talked about, like Juanita Broderick, okay?
Right.
And they're not paying attention to what we could all see, how Hillary Clinton attacked these women in public. See, people didn't see what Bill Clinton was doing to them in private in the Oval Office, but we can all see what Hillary Clinton did to the women in public, destroying their character. That's the thing that causes so many women not to move forward with rape charges, because they get destroyed in public. That's the key thing. Thank you so much, Mr. Byrne. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your book. This would be a very interesting read for anybody. Crisis of Character. You need to know the character of Hillary Clinton. This man observed it for 12 years. A very important book, Crisis of Character. You can find that at crisisofcharacterbook.com, as well as in your bookstore. Thank you so much, Mr. Byrne.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, as we're just talking to the Secret Service agent who guarded the Clintons, who saw what happened there. We are going to have Joel Gilbert and Roger Stone joining us in this next hour. They're going to be talking about the birther controversy, as well as the billboard that both of them are involved with, a massive billboard in the New York Times Square in New York City. But while we're on the Clintons and the history of what they've done, we have a special report that's very important from John Bound, how the Clintons plundered Haiti. Here's that report.
Hillary Clinton supporters, join us, won't you? Let's journey back to January 12th, 2010. Hillary Clinton had been the United States Secretary of State for about a year when a catastrophic 7.0 earthquake crisis rocked Haiti 16 miles west of Port-au-Prince. Somewhere between 160,000 to 316,000 Haitians died, while 2 million Haitians were displaced. The survivors cobbled together what they could, creating temporary communities as they waited for the world to help, only to witness the globalists using the disaster as a money-making scheme. And in walked the Clintons and the United Nations, bringing with them a cholera epidemic that infected 700,000 Haitians and killed at least 9,000.
That it's simply not acceptable for the UN to be responding to its own responsibility for having caused the worst cholera epidemic in the world by not doing anything for the victims.
Nearly $13.5 billion in aid that was mysteriously squandered.
We are telling the world of the crimes that Bill and Hillary Clinton are responsible for in Haiti, and we are telling the American people that the over 32,000 emails that Hillary Clinton said she deleted have evidence of the crimes they've committed.
Formaldehyde-laced cancer-causing trailers and a legion of corporations that would use Haiti's humanitarian crisis to line their own pockets, taking at least 25% off the top of every project they were awarded. WikiLeaks revealed the Haitian U.S. ambassador Kenneth H. Merton wrote in a cable just 20 days after the catastrophic quake, other companies are proposing their housing solutions or their land use planning ideas or other construction concepts. Each is vying for the ear of the president in a veritable free-for-all. The military logistics personnel intend to surge to around-the-clock operations until the offload is complete. The gold rush is on. And so a slew of corporations were slated to help rebuild Haiti under the U.S. Secretary of State's Interim Haiti Recovery Commission, overseen by none other than former U.S. President Bill Clinton. The IHRC approved over $330 million in projects funded by the U.S. government, including Northern Industrial Park, to accommodate 18,000 new jobs in garment, textile, and other fields by 2014. This industrial park actually brought only 10% of the jobs it promised. Port-au-Prince neighborhoods to upgrade and provide services to earthquake-affected neighborhoods, enabling displaced persons to return. According to Amnesty International, around 37,000 houses are known to have been repaired, rebuilt, or built. However, less than 20% of the housing solutions provided as a response to the disaster could be seen as long-term or sustainable. Instead, most programs have simply provided temporary measures such as the construction of temporary shelters and the allocation of rental subsidies. Initially, $53 million was spent to build 15,000 new homes, but this number morphed into $93 million for 2,600 homes, while $70 million was spent on building townhouses for the IHRC staff and roughly $20 million to build 2 soccer fields. Anyone can surmise that the Haitian people would have been far better off had the Clintons taken their foundation fleecing scheme elsewhere. Clearly, a ruthless strategy plundered this third world catastrophe. Aside from a handful of houses, a Caribbean cell phone hub enriching its globalist owners, and 2 multi-million-dollar soccer stadiums, Haiti remains unchanged. A majority of displaced Haitians still have no electricity, plumbing, and running water. John Bound for Infowars.com.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me now is Roger Stone. He's going to be with us only one segment because, from what I understand, Roger is feeling a bit hoarse. He may be coming down with something. Maybe it's that non-contagious bacterial pneumonia that's going around like wildfire threats when you're out there. But I want to talk to you about this this Super Trump ad that's going on in Times Square. Everybody is talking about it. It's on Fox. It's on BBC. All the New York papers are covering it everywhere. Tell us about that.
Sure. This a 55-foot digital billboard right on Times Square. And it is put up there by the Committee to Restore America's Greatness, a pro-Trump super PAC that I am affiliated with. It is the brainchild of Joel Gilbert, the filmmaker, and he's the guy who deserves the Ad Week magazine award because the cover of this has been extraordinary. Now, there is a point, and that is Trump is in a Superman costume because compared to Sick Hillary, he is the Man of Steel.
And, of course, the timing of this as Hillary collapses literally at the 9/11 memorial and then collapses in the polls as Joel Gilbert, who's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour. Conservative filmmaker Joel Gilbert said, you see Trump traveling around the country on his airplane. He's looking to solve people's problems. He's giving power back to the people. Who's more American than Superman? So they conflated the two images there. And, of course, this is a 55-foot digital billboard, so it's animated. And as you can see, if you're watching this broadcast, I think do we have a clip of it where you can see the animation? We'll pull that up on one of the websites there. If you actually go to the Super PAC website, you can see the ad rotating through there. And give us the information about that Super PAC website again, Roger.
I believe it is at the Committee to Restore America's Greatness, or CTRAG.org, I believe. And it is important to note that a group of activists in Florida put up a second digital billboard based on this in Orlando that over 1 million people will see. This is thanks to the generosity of the Greenberg family of Orlando.
Great.
So I think you're going to see these indigenous billboards popping up all over America. Look, up in the sky, it's a man, it's a bird. No, it's Donald Trump.
And that's a Super PAC, or maybe we could call it the Superman Super PAC. Okay. Justice League of America there. Okay, let's talk about today. I want to get your opinion about this birther controversy. We're going to have Joel Gilbert joining us at the bottom of the hour. How do you think Trump played this? I mean, he's been on a roll this week with economic news. They tried to get him derailed with this birther issue. It looked to me like he handled it pretty well.
Look, it's interesting that when the issue became Hillary's health and her unwillingness to do a press conference for over 250 days or answer basic questions, they first tried to recycle David Duke, but that got no traction. Now the counter assault was birtherism, which I'm sure in their poll shows is not helpful to Trump among African-American voters, where he's seriously making gains. A new credible poll in South Carolina yesterday, 26% of the African-American vote going for Trump. In the state polls, I'm now seeing a trend where it's still and nowhere near a majority, but he's getting double and triple what Mitt Romney or John McCain got. So the birther issue is a twofer for the Democrats, and I think Trump did exactly the right thing. It's not a salient issue. He's not going to talk about it. His supporters, his closest friends like Giuliani say he now believes the president was born in the United States. When you ask Trump, he says, I'm not going to say anymore. period.
Completely diffused it. Let's get back to solving America's economic problems. If he keeps it on that track and transcends the personal attacks that they are trying to throw at him and the other things that they're dredging up that you just mentioned, if he keeps it on his economic program, it's going to be a slam dunk. He has a very good economic program. He talked about it midweek. And, of course, Roger, this is a program that has been on his website since for about a year. It's been there, and nobody talks about it. They're waiting for Donald Trump to talk about it. Well, he did that this week. It looks like the largest tax cut we have ever seen. And, of course, we know what happened when JFK did it. We know what happened when Reagan did it. And we know what happened when George Bush the first undid it, undoing what he called voodoo economics, took away those tax cuts that Reagan put in.
Well, in this case, it's the first time that any a presidential candidate has proposed cutting the corporate tax rate. Trump wants to cut the corporate rate below that of Mexico and China. That's what brings our jobs home. That's far more effective than tariffs. Chinese, we're at 35 now. The Chinese are at 25. What if Trump went to 20 or even 22? It would really have a dynamic effect. He also wants to bring back $2 trillion. It's sitting offshore in a program called Inversion. He has a general tax cut like John Kennedy did, like Ronald Reagan did, for all taxpayers. He takes a lot of the people who are low income off the rolls entirely. Far more than ever previously. So it's a very dynamic plan. Larry Kudlow and Steve Moore and Steve Forbes and some of the sharpest minds in terms of growth economics were involved in its formulation. And let's compare it to Hillary's plan, which is more of the same.
It's very easy to demagogue the idea that you're giving tax breaks to corporations. And yet you mentioned these corporate tax rates, the fact that this would be below what he's proposed at 15% would be below what they're doing in China, nearly down to what we see in Ireland. And yet we have seen in America with Reagan's tax cuts, we've seen it in Ireland where they said, this economic miracle where they're getting factories built in their countries instead of like Ford Motor Company building factories, spending $1.6 billion to create 2,800 jobs in a giant factory down in Mexico. Instead, build the factories here. They do that if you offer them a lower tax rate. It benefits people with jobs. That's the key. The Democrats want to focus on free college. They want to focus on artificial stimulus like or mandates like a minimum wage. And yet the reality is what you really need is a job, and you need to increase your take-home pay. And that's what Donald Trump did with this program that he proposed. Increase the take-home pay and increase the number of jobs in America.
But what he's really got to do, David, is he's got to now take his plan into the barrio, into the urban centers of America, and sell it to African Americans and to Latinos, because they would be the greatest single beneficiaries. These people want a piece of the American pie. They don't want to be employees. They want to be employers. They want their families to be successful. And they really want the American dream that they've heard so much about. Trump is the greatest salesman in the world, but he's got to get into those communities more. His first foray into Detroit shows that he's committed to it.
Yeah.
But it is a very hard to getting him elected.
And he did a great job when he went into Detroit. I mean, he went in there look at that situation. Here's a city that used to be the engine of growth in America. That was the heart of our economy there in the automotive industry. And now it stands as a symbol of economic decline after Democrat policies, after there's been a flight by the corporations out of that area. And most of the people there are black. And so he goes to that area and he talks to the people and says, look, you need jobs just like everybody does. Unemployment is something that affects, as you pointed out, black people, affects Hispanics, and they are suffering under this situation. And there's something even worse coming down the road, and that is the automation. But that's another issue. But right now, we need to get a handle on starting to get factories built. And they're still building car companies, car factories. They need to be building them here in America.
I totally agree. I think this is the key to the election, a positive economic plan. The economic issue, I think, even transcends immigration, transcends trade. Of course, is linked inexorably to trade. But this is Trump's strong suit issue. He's the job creator. He's the guy who's been able to cut red tape and get things done. And I think it is the linchpin to victory. I also would like to see him talk about it more.
And I think it shows a new discipline from Donald Trump that we've seen today, not getting suckered in on this birther thing. He got on top of it and shut it down so he could get back to the central message. That's not what we saw earlier in the campaign. Earlier in the campaign, it was very easy for them to derail him with personal attacks or to get him to get down in the weeds, talking about something that they control the agenda. He totally controlled the agenda after having a successful 2 weeks where he was out there talking about economic policy, and then the CEO of Ford helped him out by announcing what he was doing to the Ford Corporation in terms of building factories in Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. David, I've got to move along. As you can see, I'm losing my voice because of long hours campaigning for Donald Trump and pushing my book, The Clintons' War on Women, now out on paperback. You can go to rogerstone.com or stonecoldtruth.com. So back to the barricades.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Thank you for joining us. I know you're feeling under the weather, and I don't want you to collapse on air like Hillary Clinton or something. Stay away from the Democrats. I understand there's a very strong, non-contagious bug that is floating around the Democrat Party. That's Roger Stone. Again, you can find his information at Stone Cold Truth. And as we're talking about the Super Trump Times Square ad that all of New York is talking about. We got New York Magazine, we got the BBC, we got the New York Post, Fox. Everybody is talking about this viral marketing program they got going on. We're going to be talking to Joel Gilbert in just a second, but we've got Alex Jones on the line. Let's go to Alex. Alex.
Sure. I called in just to ask Roger some questions that I wanted to get out. I didn't realize he was just about to get off because he's sick. But I just want to make the point here. We kind of get caught, all of us. In fact, when Roger comes on a lot, he does this, where we're like kind of putting out info like to the general public, and that's fine. It's fine to electioneer for Donald Trump and talk about the good points and things, but we really need to understand the InfoWars audience is so well informed that we need to talk about strategy in general and also how the globalists are going to be striking back. Because I was going to ask Roger, I've got my own ideas, but I'm telling you, we're in false flag territory. We're in attempted assassination of Hillary Clinton territory. We're in start a war territory. I'm telling you, the globalists are in deep trouble. They've lost Russia. They're losing the UK. The U.S. is struggling out. Once you identify globalists, it's game over for them. You guys are doing a great job. I'm just out here taking care of errands, taking care of some business, and, listening. And I hear you guys talking about Donald Trump's plan. That's called the American plan. Look, the globalists know that they've set our corporate tax way above anybody else in the world because the globalists lobby the very corporations, IBM, Berkshire Hathaway, all of them, Google, they lobby to keep the taxes high because they've built an architecture to force all the other smaller and medium corporations out of the country. Then they've got to be gatekeepered through Microsoft, through Google, through Apple, through IBM, through General Electric, and others, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, really run the whole thing, through China, who's authoritarian with generals running the economy with basically 1 billion, 300 million robots. And I'm not saying Chinese people aren't humans. I'm saying the globalists see them as biological androids, as robots. And so they built the whole global order out of leveraging us out by design. By design.
Hey, Alex,
now it's not like, oh my God.
Alex, let me interrupt you for just a second because I know you thought that Roger got off the line, but when he heard you were here, he stayed on the line. If you want to directly address a question to him, he has graciously stayed on even though he's not feeling well.
Okay, well, Roger, I know if you're under the weather from working 18 hours a day, I don't want to take your time up, but I wanted to ask you and David, it was really interesting what I heard you discussing, that, how do you think they're going to strike back? Because, I mean, I agree with you. The Electoral College is now pretty much locked. You sent me a Politico article about that. That's really important, obviously. I mean, he now is the clear leader. He would win the day of the election was held. But, I mean, they're going to strike back, and I'm just really concerned that we need to understand, folks, that they could try to kill Trump right now, like the Russians are saying. They could do an assassination attempt on Hillary, launch a new war. Roger, you've got your ear to the ground. More WikiLeaks are supposedly going to be out this week. We haven't really seen that yet from Assange. This is the perfect time to do it. So, just on that spectrum of questions, what keeps you up at night? How are they going to strike back?
Well, Alex, you're exactly right, because the level of panic, of course, is getting worse. Donald Trump pulling ahead in Ohio, ahead in Florida, ahead by 8 points in Iowa, now ahead in Colorado, now heads up in Pennsylvania. 2 points up in a poll I saw in Washington State. So panic is set in because the campaign of vilification against Trump, the bigot, racist, warmonger, Putin stew
Hillary
campaign,
looks completely freaked out and out of her mind. Her whole people look panicked. So how do they strike back?
Well, they're capable of anything. That's the point here. These people have no morality. There is no law they won't break. There is no tactic they won't try. My greatest fear is Donald Trump's personal safety. This man is going to be president. I said it for the first time on InfoWars this week. Trump is going to win. And therefore, my greatest fear is his personal safety. That is what keeps me up at night.
Absolutely. And again, England is in hysteria over Trump. They want America to come out of globalism. The Russians are hysterical, over the fact that we could actually have a chance at a world where the globalists don't play us off against each other for perpetual war. This is so historic, and I just cannot believe that I knew Trump's been a patriot for decades, but I got to tell you, Roger, I know you don't talk about private stuff with you with Trump, but I've talked to Corsi, other folks that know him, and people that have been involved with Trump for years. They say, listen, Trump has been more InfoWars than InfoWars since before it began. So just can you spend a minute or two just so we can think about Trump here and who he really is, and behind the scenes, just a regular Americana guy that has been planning this forever and then seized the moment to defeat the globalists. I mean, this is so historic. That's why they're so panicked. What will we see if Trump gets in?
Alex, we lost Roger for just a moment. We're reestablishing contact with him.
Sure. And by the way, I just called in to point out that I wanted to ask him, how are they going to strike back? Because I just have so much anxiety right now that they're in full panic, David. And we should pray for Donald Trump. The fact that the new Guccifer DC leaks stuff is the Bohemian Grove, the Republican establishment is out to get Trump. We already know that, but this is proof. This is everything we've asked for. His plan will work because if you cut taxes and just leave spending the same, more money comes in because the economy starts up. And that's what poor folks, who are on the Democratic Party plantation don't get. What Trump's doing is the American system. It's the return of America. It's the return of the big engine. It's the return of everything. And globalism is in full panic right now, David.
Yeah, Alex, and as I said before, we've seen this work under Reagan. We saw it before that under JFK. We've seen it work in Ireland. When they cut their tax rates to about what Donald Trump is talking about, we saw a massive increase in economic activity. What people need is not a mandate from government to raise minimum wage. That's going to cost them jobs. The kind of mandates.
The houses, the cars, the swimming pools, the education, the religious freedom, the vacations, all of it is letting people's desires and will to build good things be there and not having monopolies. And so America has been far from perfect, but it had more freedom for a fleeting 150 years or so than any other country. And folks, we can go back any time. We can say, China, you're not going to have your currency 35 points below ours, another tariff. Sorry. You're not going to have a corporate tax 10 points lower than us. Sorry. We're going to have a level playing field. We're going to have level playing field. Not Hillary and George Soros selling factory jobs of Americans out to China. They actually get money for these folks. They caught Pacharia, the head of the UN Climate Fund, transferring the last steelworks in England to India and even got the taxpayers in England to pay for it as some weird liberal suicide pact. And then his son took over the factory. These people are just, and coal plants. These people are sick. And they tell us what geniuses they are, selling off what the free market built and laughing at everyone. I'm going to hand it back to you, David, doing a fantastic job. I want to thank Roger for calling back in. I know you got a lot more coming up, but this is a big, big deal. A lot's happening. And so history is unfolding. I want to thank all the listeners and viewers for your support. We got big specials on Super Male Vitality and Super Female Vitality right now, 20% off. It's a great herbal, cold press. Nobody else has got something like it. Very powerful. Try it for yourself, regardless if you're fighting the operation. The Vitamin Mineral Fusion Fruit Punch, and just so much more. All of this is just good things everybody needs. Water filtration systems, Hillary for Prison shirts. It's just an information war. So God bless you, David, and the rest of the group.
Thank you, Alex. And, of course, when we're talking about what happened with the economy, remember that yesterday, actually, it was Donald Trump giving an economic presentation of his program, which has been on his website for quite some time. He's talked about eliminating the specifics about how he's going to eliminate so many of the different tax brackets, taking them from 7 to 3, and that the new 3 tax brackets would be 12, 25, 33. Low-income Americans would pay no income tax at all. But here's how he explained it to people. He said, earlier this week, I went to Flint, Michigan. He said in 1970, there were 80,000 people in Flint, Michigan working for General Motors. He said today, it is less than 8,000. And then, of course, we just got information that Ford is building a new plant in Mexico. And at the same time, we've got Obama deliberately taking down the coal industry, trying to shut down even the natural gas industry. This is what Clinton and Obama have been doing. He says, my economic plan, this is Trump talking, he says, my economic plan rejects the cynicism that says our labor force will keep declining. We don't have to do this. This is an artificial condition that has been imposed on us by the multinational globalists and the people that they control, like Obama and Hillary Clinton, moving our jobs to other countries, shutting us down, bringing in more workers. And so it is a compassionate thing for people of every race. So we don't have to go back to the malaise that Jimmy Carter gave us. I remember how everybody was wringing their hands and saying there was no way that we could ever compete with Japan in the late 70s. We had this condition of malaise. Everybody was saying America is over. That was all the Carter administration. That all happened within just a 4-year period. Things got that bad that quickly. We had skyrocketing stagflation. And then you had Ronald Reagan come in. And what was the key thing that he did? He removed some of the government burden from us. And what happened? Freedom and the economy flourished. Some of the statistics that Trump was talking about, 1 in 6 men aged 18 to 34, either in jail or out of work. Now, he's talking predominantly here to the black community. He's saying, this is why you should support me rather than Hillary Clinton, who talks about predators that need to be put in jails, and we need to fill up the jails of predators. He says it took more than 230 years for the U.S. to accumulate its first $10 trillion of debt. Obama did it in just 8 years. He doubled that again, okay? We've got some growth in America, but it's only 2.1% over 7 years. It is stagnant. Their economic figures in terms of unemployment, as we pointed out many times, are there simply because they rigged the stats. Stay with us. We're going to talk to Joel Gilbert when we come back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to be talking to filmmaker and director Joel Gilbert. He's on the line with us right now. We've just had Jean-Claude Juncker, head of the European Commission, the European Union's executive branch, just talk about galloping populists and saying that it is an existential crisis for the globalists. And yes, it is. And as we see the galloping populists, Joel Gilbert is part of the viral ad campaign in New York's Times Square. We were just talking to Roger Stone. He and Roger put this viral campaign together. I want to talk to Joel Gilbert about his film Dreams from My Real Father, as well as he's got There's No Place Like Utopia. That's his more recent film. But I want to talk about the issue that came up today with Donald Trump about the birth certificate, but also about this viral ad campaign. Great job on that, Joel.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I put together and offered it up to Roger Stone's PAC, and they're working with me. And the idea was to show Donald Trump as this kind of Superman, this super character that would it would appeal to millennials and low information voters, I guess, and also kind of provoke the media to pick up on it, because it was right smack in the middle of Times Square and the media capital of the world. So you see this giant Donald Trump as Superman, and a lot of people feel he has those same characteristics. His voters believe he stands for truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah.
And there he is flying over Times Square, and it really
we're looking at it here.
Yeah, it really represents. It's kind of funny. It's kind of cool, and it represents something compared to Hillary Clinton, especially with her collapsing episode. It shows you that Trump has the stamina to carry forward. Yeah,
that's a very important point to make, and you made it with humor. And you guys put in like $25,000, and you've got millions upon millions of free publicity as the media covers it. I mean, you really did replicate what Donald Trump has been able to do along this campaign, maximize the amount of bang for the buck that you put into this. But, you know, he really is flying everywhere. And that's one of the reasons why they're pushing back on this health issue. You know, as soon as we saw Hillary Clinton literally collapsing and having to be thrown into the van by the Secret Service agents who cordoned around to try to hide it, but it was too late. People saw it. Having to throw her in the back of the van like a piece of meat, and everybody's going, "What's going on here?" Well, they come back and they say, "Well, we need to see his records." I think, you know, when he put those records out the first time, Joel, he was basically just kind of saying, trolling them in a sense and saying, "Hey, my health, forget about it. You can see I'm healthy. I'm going everywhere all at once." I think it was interesting, too. The only thing that they could really complain about, and it became headlines everywhere, was Donald Trump's weight. Okay, so here's the New York Times. Donald Trump checkup said revealed that he is overweight. I mean, this is a guy who is going everywhere. And he says, "Sure, I'd like to lose a few pounds." I mean, what American wouldn't? We eat so much sugar, okay? But the issue is, and I thought this was funny, Daily Caller comes out and says, how much does Hillary Clinton weigh? Nobody is talking about her wealth. Weight. I guess we talk about her wealth, don't we? But we don't talk about her weight. I guess that's off bounds for a female candidate to talk about her weight.
Yeah, there's no end of double standards. Monica Crowley made a good point on Fox News the other night. She said there's physiological age in addition to actual age, and that Donald Trump every day flies around the country, gives fantastic speeches with great energy in 3 or 4 places. He drops into Detroit. He drops into Southside Chicago, kind of like Superman asking, "How can I help you? How can I help people?" And he's showing that he's quite a young man physically and mentally, whereas Hillary Clinton has shown signs that she's a much older woman physiologically. She's not able to campaign. I think it was only 5 days in the entire month of August. So she seems like she's barely hanging on, and Donald Trump looks like he's just getting started.
And when you look at the report that's released by her medical staff there, I mean, no matter how technical the report is, it just isn't believable when we see, as you're pointing out, the fact that she can't even go out to campaign. She's so sick and feeble, okay? And the fact that he is everywhere. So their actions speak far louder than any of these reports. Let's talk about today. They tried to distract him on the birther issue, and you did an entire documentary we've talked about, had you on many times here at InfoWars, Dreams from My Real Father. I personally think that it is really more of a distraction to talk about where. What's more important is to talk about who his father was, not where he was born, but to talk about who his father was, who the influences were on this man, being influenced by a communist leader and growing up in Indonesia. I mean, people need to look at what was going on in Indonesia with the CIA, with the government that his adoptive father was part of, and look at the Islamic influences in his education. I mean, all of that, everything that happened in Indonesia at that time with Suharto and the crimes that were being committed there. And of course, we don't hear about that in the United States because they were our allies. If you'd have been in another country, everybody would have been talking about the massive executions in Indonesia with the regime that his adoptive father was part of. But give us your take on what happened today with the birther incident.
Okay, well, the mainstream media is very desperate to try to smear Donald Trump in any way they can, especially because he's making so many inroads with minority voters. Barack Obama and the radical Democrats used and abandoned the black voters twice in the past 8 years and did nothing for them. In my movie, There's No Place Like Utopia, I go to Southside Chicago, Detroit, Newark, all these places that show that exactly what Trump has been saying in his speeches is that Democrats have controlled these cities for the past 50, 60, 100 years. And what you have is massive destruction, violence, drug cultures, single mothers, unemployment. And the black voters, as you saw in my film, realize they've been had, and they're ready for a change. So they're desperate to try to smear Donald Trump with a racism card. The name birther, I did an interview for the BBC recently and explained to them, the name birther or birtherism are simply smears for people that asked good questions that the media would not ask. And the way it came about was that Obama in 2008 made many promises. He said, I'm going to cut the deficit in half. Obamacare is not a tax. I'm going to support Israel. We're going to negotiate Obamacare with everybody in the same room. So once he became president and threw everybody under the bus, abandoned all his promises and pursued a radical left agenda, people started to ask the question, wait a minute, who would do something like that? What about his college records? Let's learn more about him. What about his Senate state Senate records. Why won't he release these? What about his birth certificate? He said he grew up in Indonesia. His father's from Kenya. Let's find out more why this guy is abandoning all his voters and all the minorities that he promised he would help. So Donald Trump simply asked the question, can we please see your birth certificate? Can we please see your records? So the media, rather than asking those questions themselves, which was their job, they invented this smear, birth or birtherism. They're desperate, and Trump is trying to, again, put their nonsense to rest and say, okay, he was born in the United States. I think in my film there's a great case, Dreams from My Real Father. I show a mountain of evidence that the Kenyan Obama was not Obama's real biological father. In fact, it was the Communist Party propagandist and Soviet agent Frank Marshall Davis. Obama admits he was raised by Davis, and I think I showed that in addition to being his biological father, that Frank Marshall Davis was his ideological mentor, and that Obama was radicalized by Frank Marshall Davis into his communist, anti-white, anti-American worldview throughout his teenage years. And that's why Obama went back to Chicago, where Frank Marshall Davis was from. He was one of the original black Bolsheviks, the blacks that were recruited by white communists into the Communist Party to try to trick black people into joining these programs. Obama goes back to Chicago, follows in the footsteps of his real father. He gloms on to Reverend Wright, who's kind of the same guy, anti-white, anti-American. Obama calls Reverend Wright his uncle because it's literally the same type of guy, father figure. And that's why Obama is so comfortable with anti-American extremists. And that's why they're so comfortable with him. So lo and behold, deja vu, terrorist emeritus Bill Ayers has his father raise money to bring Obama from New York after he finished at Columbia to Chicago, and he becomes part of the Developing Communities projects to infiltrate the black churches. Obama was simply a front man with a black face to fool black people into joining these socialist Marxist causes.
And I think that's very important because we've seen that Bill Ayers understood early on, SDS, they were the ones who essentially created white privilege. They called it white skin privilege with the SDS and the Weather Underground at the time. He's an individual, very intelligent. He realized after a short period of time he wasn't going to get anywhere destroying America by bombing a building here and a building there. He realized that what he needed to do was to create a race war, and the way that he would do it is through the educational system. And so we see this cluster of radicals, communist radicals, and focusing on education, as you just pointed out. The community organizers and all of these people, Bill Ayers and the people that were surrounding Obama, getting involved in restructuring our educational system. And I think that's the core thing, how he was mentored by Bill Ayers, how he was mentored by Frank Marshall Davis. This is the key thing. This is who the man is. And Correct. It doesn't matter where he first touched Earth, okay? It matters what his influences are, and that's what you're pointing out. That's really what the birther movement was about. Who is this guy? It's the transparency, stupid, is what we need to tell the left media. We need to understand who these people are, and just like Hillary Clinton, they want to cover everything, seal all records, keep everything secret.
Well, look, Obama based his candidacy on his personal background. That's why it was so significant. He hadn't done anything in the U.S. Senate. Nobody knew who he was. So his entire candidacy was based on, my father's a goat herder from Kenya. I'm going to bring everybody together. Now, this was a false narrative. He had a deeply disturbing family background. His father was a Soviet agent and communist propagandist who radicalized him during his youth, and he followed in his footsteps in this little-known American Marxist movement. He shows up in Chicago and becomes mentored by these same radicals out of the 60s. Now, Bill Ayers and his gang taught the new generation of radicals a valuable lesson. In the late 60s, they'd look you in the eye and they'd say, we're going to destroy America. We're going to replace the Constitution with a Communist Manifesto. We're going to put 50 million Americans in re-education centers, and we're going to murder 25 million Americans. Yeah. And we're going to break up the United States and have it occupied by China, North Korea, Vietnam, and Russia. They look you in the eye and they say, okay, now we're going to bomb the Pentagon. We're going to murder police and create this revolution. Now, it was so evil that nobody followed them. They ended up going to jail, into the underground for 10, 12 years. When they got out of jail and came back to Chicago and got into education, the valuable lesson they taught Obama was, when you try to get people to support you, don't tell them your true agenda. Look them in the eye and tell them you want to help working families. Look them in the eye and tell them you want to help people get health care. And then use their support to take power. And once you take power, you'll pursue the radical agenda. But you must have a stealth policy and don't tell anybody your real policy. These guys slowly infiltrated the Democrat Party, and today the Democrat Party is a radical socialist party.
Yeah, and that's what we see now with Black Lives Matter as well. There's always a mask that is there. There's always a redirection that they use in this, and that's precisely what's happened. It is really who the man is. I think that is a very core thing. But today, I thought Trump did a masterful job of not getting sidetracked and taking the bait. As you pointed out, they wanted to make this, again, about racism. But what Donald Trump has been doing is going to places throughout Michigan and others, showing them what the Democrat policies have actually created there, and saying to people, as you pointed out, Joel, you don't want to live in this. This is destroying your lives. And that was a very powerful message. And so now we see him pulling even with Hillary Clinton in Michigan, of all places. Absolutely amazing.
Well, look, in my film, There's No Place Like Utopia, which I know Alex has for sale in your store. I talked to a lot of black women, in Chicago, Detroit. And these are very smart people. They say, look, we don't want any part of this progressive nonsense. We don't want illegal aliens coming and taking our jobs and driving down our wages. We don't want our kids smoking legal marijuana. They don't want any of this nonsense. They've lived it. They're like people that came out of East Germany. They've lived this horror for 50 years. And you see, when Donald Trump simply went and talked to them like I did, they respond very favorably because they know better. And by the way, Hillary, people don't know, it took us quite a while to research and come out with the information and disseminate it about Obama's real background. A lot of people don't know that Hillary herself is a Chicago radical. She had her own Reverend Wright. She had a reverend named Don Jones, was her Methodist youth minister, who introduced her to Saul Alinsky when she was in high school. Hillary Clinton had her own Bill Ayers. She was a follower of SDS President Carl Oglesby, and she often quoted his book, Containment and Change. So Hillary comes from the same radical Chicago background with these same radical characters. She just went more mainstream and hid it for longer than Obama did, whereas Obama burst on the scene, but by the time people could catch up to who he really was, it was too late.
Yeah, and of course, the paper that she did in college on Saul Alinsky is Rules for Radicals. I don't know, I think that's still sealed, isn't it? Or did they unseal that paper?
No, we've seen her college thesis, and she, talks about Alinsky's methodology for a revolution to end capitalism. Alinsky offered her a job, a summer internship, offered her to come work for him full time, and she wrote him back. We have the letters where she said, I want to pursue radical change through the system instead of from the outside. It was very clear. So Hillary has pursued these radical policies, and she said that she's going to continue Obama's policies of open borders, executive actions, complete opposite of the constitutional system that would essentially end the republic as we know it. And we're going to, if she wins, we're going to enter, I believe, an era of liberal fascism.
Earlier in the program, we talked to Gary Byrne, who was a Secret Service agent stationed for much of the time just outside the Oval Office, talking about what he saw guarding the Clinton family for 12 years. And, that's a key thing when we look at the corruption with the Clintons, to understand, as he pointed out, that she sees that she's above the rules. No rules apply to her. If you really wanted to get Hillary Clinton angry, what you would do is tell her, well, that's not the procedure. We can't do that. Or something. That's when she would come after you with the claws, okay? So what we have seen with both her and with Obama is nothing but absolute contempt for the Constitution, for the rule of law, the executive orders. We know that they're trying to deliberately shut down entire industries. It's not just opening the borders to immigrants to have a population replacement to create conflict within this country after they've gone in and started wars in other areas, then bring people in that they can't possibly vet. I mean, how many people do they really need? What percentage of population do they really need to have an army of terrorists? I mean, they just said in Germany, after bringing in 500,000 people, they said, hey, we think we might have 500 jihadis. That's only 1/10 of 1%. That's the policy of Hillary Clinton. That's the policy of Barack Obama that we've seen. We're talking to Joel Gilbert. We'll be right back. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk more with a man who did Dreams of My Real Father. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we've been talking to Joel Gilbert. We've got one more segment with Joel. Of course, he is the director, writer, filmmaker for Dreams of My Real Father, or From My Real Father, and also There's No Place Like Utopia. You know, the socialists always love to sell us this utopian vision where they're going to solve everything. Well, that doesn't exist. And so, as he mentioned in the last segment, he was talking to people throughout the inner cities in Michigan and other places, saying, you know, what do you think about this this bill of goods, this utopian vision that's been sold to you by the socialists? And of course, he's also the creator of the viral animated billboard that is up this week in Times Square in New York City. Absolute genius. Millions of dollars worth of publicity for $25,000. Great job, Joel. I'm going to go back to Joel in just a moment. Before I do, real quickly, I want to let you know that we have the Super Male Vitality Special at InfoWarsLife.com. 20% off. That will be ending very soon. Again, take a look at the 5-star reviews at InfoWarsLife.com. Look at what people like Tim Kennedy and Alex Jones have said about it. Tim Kennedy training for this fight coming up in Madison Square Gardens. He talked quite a bit about how effective he thought that was in terms of helping him with his training. But a lot of people, we got hundreds of reviews, hundreds of 5-star reviews at InfoWarsLife.com, people talking about Super Male Vitality and their experience with it. And again, you can get it now. 20% off. That special will be ending very soon at InfoWarsLife.com. Let's go back to Joel. Joel, we were talking just before the break. I want to give you the rest of this segment to basically put an end cap on this. Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, you talked about how the Democrat Party, Obama, Hillary, have no respect for the Constitution or rule of law. And this is part of their ideology because they learned from the Alinskyite ideology that the ends justifies the means.
Yes.
Therefore, the goal in the long term is the revolution. It's the revolution. I think they don't even care if they lose this election because it's a long-term prospect. It's been going on for many years. They wouldn't mind simply spending the next 2 or 3 years registering illegals, trying to agitate the country against Donald Trump, this evil billionaire who's so racist, and come back in 4 years with Julian Castro or Cory Booker or some of this new generation of radicals. So even if Trump wins, it's going to be quite a challenge to not make it a 4-year aberration that simply continues the revolution. The Soviet Union and the Comintern, the Communist Party in the 30s, by the 1940s, early 50s, they realized the United States could not be defeated militarily. The only way to defeat it would be through internal means. And we've seen a decades-long effort to take over the Democrat Party. Obama's election was not a sudden political phenomenon. It was really the result of this American socialist movement that took over American universities, entertainment, and media over the decades. And today we have this radical socialist party where you have Bernie Sanders, a known lifelong communist. People are voting for him, but most people don't really understand what he's talking about when he says political revolution. He's just adding the word political. It means a revolution against the American way, a revolution against capitalism, a revolution against our Constitution. No different from the 60s radicals or the Communist Manifesto. It's an ideology that rejects free markets, free speech, limited government.
And we've seen this with the Pope, who's part of the globalist movement, the climate movement and everything, a Pope who has embraced liberation theology, and a Jesuit who has a lot in common with Tim Kaine. That's another subject for another day, to go back into Tim Kaine's background. And he's somebody who really needs to be vetted, especially with the health issues of Hillary Clinton. If she were to become president, we need to know more about this guy. Thank you so much, Joel Gilbert, again, the director of Dreams from My Real Father. Great to have you on. Thank you for coming on very quickly. We'll be right back. We have a lot more news to cover. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. We're going to cover a lot of news this hour. We got an article that went up on Infowars.com earlier today. Hillary Clinton says, your kids belong to the state. Of course, this is something we've heard before from the Democrats, that foolish idea, Melissa Harris Perry, that your kids belong to you. No, they don't. And we're going to give you some news articles to tell you exactly why they don't. It's very, very clear. If you stop and think about it, the government doesn't think that they belong to you. The government thinks that the village is going to raise your children. We've got an article that's breaking today that was on the Drudge Report about Maryland throwing a bunch of kids out of school because they don't like their vaccination record, okay? That's just one small example of what's going on. We're going to talk about a lot of those different aspects. We're going to talk about what's going on in North Carolina, the hypocrisy behind this fight and this push by the Obama administration that's going on there. That's the kind of the tip of the spear there. But of course, it was North Carolina where Hillary Clinton went, and perhaps she thought that because of that, she was going to get a great deal of love. Well, nobody really showed up. It's a very small group of people that were there, and as they were there, I want to play this clip again. Alex played this earlier. Hecklers screaming at Hillary Clinton. Let's play her warm reception there at this tiny rally.
People like me, we're lucky. When I'm under the weather.
Yeah.
Now,
we beat that out.
Conversation, and other people can wave their arms and their signs, but I want you to think with me for a minute about how I certainly feel lucky. When I'm under the weather, I can afford to take a few.
Yeah, right. And we beat that out, so we can't play that on the radio. It's basically F Hillary as she was going in there. Other people were yelling out to her, you suck. Okay, that was North Carolina. And interestingly enough, even 538, this is yet another state, 538 had been calling North Carolina for Hillary Clinton for quite some time. And of course, 538 really hates Donald Trump. I mean, Nate Silver has consistently underestimated Donald Trump's support. But even there, they're saying that who will win North Carolina right now? They've got Trump with a 9-point lead over Hillary Clinton, 54.5 to 45.5 in North Carolina. There's good reasons for that. I don't think that North Carolina is a purple state. They call it a toss-up state, a must-win state. If you look at the state government there, they've got a Republican governor, both senators are Republican, the majority of the congressmen as well as the House. Everything is Republicans throughout North Carolina, but they consistently want to portray it as a purple state. Now, I think that the real story that they're not talking about are states like Colorado that are now moving towards Trump, states like Michigan that are now a toss-up. And so even Politico comes out and says Trump cracks the Electoral College lock. They say if the election were held today, Donald Trump would apparently win roughly as many electoral votes as Hillary Clinton, who held a commanding lead in early August and seemed to be closing off all possible Trump routes to a 270 electoral push. And even they come in and say a slightly more aggressive estimate would even add Nevada and North Carolina. They're saying that they're essentially tied, but they're not even putting North Carolina in that column. That is Politico. That's the way they spin this. Remember everybody wringing their hands and saying it's all over for Trump just a couple of weeks ago. And now that lead, according to their own rigged metrics, has vanished. And now Trump is ahead nationally and ahead in these battleground states, and they still won't talk about the collapse of Hillary Clinton. Instead, what we get from places like The Atlantic is how Bernie Sanders diehards echo the conspiracy theories of the right. Say they're actually looking at this objectively, criticizing Hillary Clinton, calling them out on the lies, the obvious lies about her health issues, and their conspiracy theorists. When is the left going to realize that doesn't work anymore? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. There's been a lot of news today, and of course we had Donald Trump come out and address the birther issue, which the Hillary Clinton camp raised again, as Joel Gilbert, our guest in the last half hour, pointed out. They did this simply because they want to try to spin this as a racist issue. But the issue is the economy. And Donald Trump is gaining ground with the black community because he's gone to places like Flint, Michigan. He's pointed out to them, these policies are destroying you. They're destroying your community, but they're destroying you personally. And they understand that. So then, of course, the left comes up with these labels, okay, like birther and so forth and so on. And he handled it, I thought, brilliantly. He came out and said, you know what? Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. That's what Donald Trump said. He said, I finished it. I finished it. In other words, I got him to release the birth certificate. That finished it. He says she's the one that started it. She was incapable or unable to finish it. That's the way it worked out. But I got him to release his birth certificate. So now we have a big statement. I hope you're going to be watching, okay? And as we point out in the article at Infowars.com, it was Hillary who also further stoked the issue with a 60 Minutes interview where she told Steve Kroft that Obama was not a Muslim. Well, as far as I know. Okay, keep it going. That's the way she rolls. But I want to talk a little bit about what else is happening in politics. This article really caught my attention today from The Hill. Libertarian Party asks for a national security briefing. I thought that was kind of funny, especially with the Aleppo controversy that we just had. I guess Gary Johnson wants to get to the very bottom of this Aleppo question once and for all. What is Aleppo? Do you guys have that clip, the what is Aleppo thing? Okay, let's play that.
Its biggest university is Boise State.
What is Aleppo?
No. Cue the deer and antelope. This is Kansas's state song.
What is Aleppo?
No. A Liberian warlord known as General Butt Naked inspired an antagonist in this recent musical about missionaries in Africa.
Aleppo.
You are wrong. Heinrich Heine.
Okay, let's hold it right there. That's a great parody that the Daily Beast did. But of course, he was asked about Aleppo, and he just comes back, what is Aleppo? And the guy says, are you kidding me? Okay, look, I understand, a lot of libertarians understand from the standpoint that we don't need a president who is the ruler of the world, who is going everywhere, starting wars everywhere. And actually, Donald Trump came out and said, I'm not running for president of the world. I'm running for president of the United States. So we don't want or need an interventionist president. But at the same time, the Aleppo situation was getting very hot in the summer of 2012 when Gary Johnson was running the last time. So if you're going to get a briefing on national security for the libertarians, maybe you could at the same time arrange a briefing for them on the Constitution and how that works, how the Second Amendment works, what the purpose of the Second Amendment is. Give them a history lesson at the same time, a briefing on that. Maybe you could brief them on economics and on trade and the history of what has happened since NAFTA. There's a lot of briefings that Weld and Gary Johnson need, okay, beyond Aleppo. But they do make a valid point, I think. They say, well, you know, there's only 3 tickets that'll be on the ballot in all 50 states and so forth. I should get a security briefing. I think they need all the help that they can get. But, and I would like to see debates opened up somewhat. I think that's a very high bar. You know, it's not Donald Trump that Gary Johnson is hurting, actually. It's Hillary Clinton. Isn't that interesting? Because, you know, 4 years ago, when we were interviewing Gary Johnson, he came across to me as a social justice warrior. All he was really concerned at the time with was homosexual marriage. He wasn't concerned about the TSA. He wasn't concerned about dragnet surveillance and the stuff that was going on with that. He wasn't concerned about any of that stuff, okay? He wasn't concerned about the emerging police state. Instead, he was concerned about the same kind of social justice warrior issues that the left had. And now they've doubled down. He described Weld as the original libertarian when he was getting the nomination and wanted this guy who has opposed, has supported as governor of Massachusetts all kinds of gun control issues opposing the Second Amendment. That is where these guys are. And now we've got Politico saying that Gary Johnson is cutting into Clinton's lead. See, they thought he was going to cut into Donald Trump's lead, except that the things that would appeal to conservatives and constitutionalists and real libertarians, not the LP, but real libertarians, all of those issues, like the Second Amendment, he's abandoned. They've abandoned, that ticket has abandoned those libertarian principles. And as we start to see how this is working out, saying, I'm going to support the idea that the government can hold a gun to the head of a baker or a photographer and tell them, you must serve this customer over here. Even in the debates when they came out and one of the other candidates said, so would you force a Jewish baker to bake a Nazi cake? He's like, oh, yeah, absolutely I would. It's like you have absolutely no idea about what private property or individual freedom is about if you say that. You just don't support individual liberty if you come up with that sort of thing. So as I point out, he was never supposed to be a problem for Hillary Clinton, but he is, to the point that Clinton, this is from The Hill, wants Al Gore to warn voters about voting for third parties. See the way this is working out? Even more so to Donald Trump's advantage. We now have both Jill Stein and the Libertarian Party becoming clones of the Democrats. Clones, especially the Libertarians, not so much Jill Stein being a clone of the globalists. She supports climate change, which is a globalist tool. You know, we can look at this and say, well, are they going to take over the economy, take our sovereignty away using the climate treaties or the trade treaties or whatever? So she's a mixed bag on some of those tactics that they're using. But understand that both of these candidates now, both the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, are essentially clones of the Democrats. And they're going to take votes away from Hillary Clinton once people get past the labels. If you can get past the idea that the Libertarian Party no longer supports, under this ticket, no longer supports individual liberty, if you can get past the idea of the Green Party, then if you look at dig down and look at their policies, you're going to see that they're clones of Hillary Clinton. I said for a long time, that Gary Johnson was essentially a stalking horse for Hillary Clinton, coming out all the time, attacking Donald Trump personally, ad hominem attacks against him, and praising Hillary Clinton. And now we're seeing the results of this. That's a stalking horse tactic. Remember, I've talked about that before. If you've ever seen Jeremiah Johnson, one of my all-time favorite movies, Robert Redford, and then he's being schooled about how to survive out in the wilderness with the old mountain man, Will Greer, I think was his name, Greer, yeah. And so he's telling him how to hunt a bear. And he goes, all right, we're going to get behind this horse and we're going to use it as cover. That's the classic example of a stalking horse. They put the gun up on the back of the horse to shoot the bear. And the new guy, the greenhorn, Robert Redford says he's going to see our legs, and he says, "Bear don't know how many legs a horse has got." And that's the thing. The voters don't know how many legs the globalists have. But now they're being hoisted by their own petard. They've put this guy out there. They've funded him. He's gotten a lot of money. He's running a lot of ads, Gary Johnson is. They funded this guy, and now he's siphoning votes from their own candidate. Hillary Clinton is getting kicked in the head by her own stalking horse. This lady can't get a break. I could almost feel sorry for her. Nah, I'm not sorry for her. Not at all. Okay, in the amount of time we've got left before we go to the break, I real quickly want to go over some of these metrics. Now stay with me, because this is something you need to understand. This policy was up on Donald Trump's website for the longest time. And I understand he talks to people at a third or fourth grade level. People don't want to hear facts and figures. So, he will go to the New York Economic Club in Manhattan, and he'll lay out the details, and he'll get some coverage of this. But it is a very important plan on principle. So we don't have to drill down into a lot of the details and principle. Just understand that whenever taxes are simplified, whenever taxes are lowered, that is a good thing, boys and girls. That's a good thing, okay? When you talk about how you're struggling economically, you don't need to have the government come in with a lot of mandates that are going to make it so expensive for the businesses that they're going to have to fire you, or they're going to have to cut your hours down to where you're now a part-time employee because they can't afford to pay the fatwas of insurance for you, okay? The mandates on government insurance that are being mandated. You cannot mandate prosperity, okay? That's why when all these governors get up and talk about all the jobs that they created in the debates, it's baloney. Governments don't create jobs, except in Washington where they create massive bureaucracies, okay? And that's one of the things he wants to cut as well. Governments don't create jobs. What they do is get out of the way and let people who want to take the risk build it. See, they didn't build it. Obama, you didn't build it, okay? The people who took the risk, who invested their money, who did the hard work, built it. And what Donald Trump is saying, he understands as being one of those people. He understands that if we get government out of the way, we're going to have prosperity. And we have seen it, as I said before. We saw it under JFK. We saw it under Ronald Reagan. When they simplify and cut the taxes, We see job creation from businesses, and you see your take-home income increase. That's the key. It's not having a minimum wage increase to $15 an hour. It's what are you really going to take home? Do you have a job, and do you have any money left after the government takes a slice? Okay? That's the key metric here. Think of it in the simple statements about that. That is the big overview. He also understands what's going on with China. One of the things he says, I'm going to instruct the U.S. Trade Representative to bring trade cases against China. China's unfair subsidy behavior is prohibited by the terms of its entrance into the World Trade Organization, and I intend to enforce those rules. If China doesn't stop its illegal activities, including theft of American trade secrets and intellectual property, I will apply countervailing duties until China ceases and desists. As somebody who has competed against the China price, which involves not only the theft of intellectual property and patents, but also involves currency manipulation, slave labor, he understands what the China price is. He understands the unfairness of it, okay? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I want to talk about Australia is about to dump the United Nations, okay? They're not about to. I'll put it this way. They're gaining momentum. It's a movement in Australia to get rid of the United Nations. See, that's why the globalists are in such dire straits. We've got Juncker wringing his hands about the demise of the European Union's superstate. He's talking about galloping populists. Yeah, galloping like Paul Revere. The globalists are coming. Yeah, actually, the globalists are receding. The globalists are receding, but we need to press on with this. And so even in Australia, they're moving to dump the UN. I want to talk about that. Before we do, real quickly, I want to let you know about the sales that we have that are going to be expiring very soon. This is how we fund our operation. We are upfront about what we do, folks. Very transparent. We try to get the best products we can, products that we are proud to carry here, products we don't have to be ashamed of to sell to an advertiser, say, you know, I'm not really, these people are buying ads from us, but I'm not really happy with this. No, we go out and Alex finds the very best stuff he can get, and we put it out there to help you to prepare for your family, to provide for your health and for your family's health. So what do we got today? We've got 30% to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. We've extended that sale for you. Again, you'll find that at InfoWarsStore.com. That's our high quality, super high quality, made in the U.S. storable foods. They have a shelf life of 25 years. Even after you open these and start to use them, they've got resealable bags. All of it made in the U.S., non-GMO, okay? Good quality food that will last for 25 years. 30 to 40% off. That's a huge discount. That's not going to last much longer. We've already extended that once, and it's about done. Also ending soon, 20% off Super Male Vitality at InfoWarsLife.com. Both of those sales will be ending very soon, so take advantage of those to support our operation and also to provide for your health and your family's health. Let's take a look at this. You know, we've got the United Nations. People in Australia are pushing back against this. People are waking up all over the world to what the globalists have been doing to us. And when you look at this, and what we're going to talk about in the next segment, we're going to talk about the efforts of the people like Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, and others to try to get this whole idea that it takes a village to raise your children. Remember, that was Hillary Clinton. That alone should cause you to work adamantly to make sure this woman does not get into the presidency. A woman who thinks that the rules don't apply to her, as we heard from the Secret Service agent that guarded the family for 12 years. We heard that from him earlier today. And the woman who thinks that not only do the rules not apply to her, but she should be raising your children. As a matter of fact, I heard this over and over again. It was absolutely amazing when Michelle Obama was speaking at the DNC. She just kept talking about how we needed Hillary to raise our kids for these next 8 years. And she wasn't just talking about her being a role model. No, she was talking about her raising the kids. So we've got an article at Infowars.com. We're going to talk about that and other issues about raising your children. But as we're looking at what's going on with the United Nations, understand that the war on drugs, which has been the root cause of our militarized police state, the root cause of our prison state. We have more people in prison than any other country in history. All of that is coming from the war on drugs. And where did the war on drugs come from? Not Richard Nixon in 1971, but the United Nations in 1961. They wrote the schedules. They put the drugs in the schedules. They created the template and handed it to Richard Nixon. 10 years later, he stamps it and puts it into effect, just like we've got the American Legislative Council and other people that are writing the laws for state legislatures and say, you know, here, just put your name and the state, you signed it at the bottom, put the name of the state at the top, and we've already written the laws for you. Well, the United Nations did that with the war on drugs. And I got to say to the conservatives, I don't want my children doing drugs. I don't want to do drugs. That's not why I'm saying we need to end prohibition. I'm saying prohibition in and of itself is an evil thing. I've talked to law enforcement against prohibition many times. Jim Gierach is one of the people that I've talked to there. I interviewed him many times. These are former prosecutors, police officers, who really wanted to see drug abuse and addiction stop. They bought into the idea that it could be done by force, that the right way to do this was with a hammer or with a cocked gun or shooting people, okay? All it did was exacerbate the problem. All it did was create new problems of a corrupt police department, of a militarized police department, of a prison state, of a loss of the rule of law, of civil asset forfeiture where the government can take your property without even charging you with a crime, let alone finding you guilty. That is the fruit of the United Nations. And I have to say to conservatives, if you reject the idea, and you should, we're going to talk about this in the next segment, of the fact that kids belong to the state, that it takes a village to raise kids. If you reject that idea, and you should wholeheartedly, understand that it does not take a village, it does not take the state to keep your kids off drugs. It takes you. It takes you. It's a hard work. It's not guaranteed, but the state can't do it. We've had 45 years of that failed process. You only can keep your kids off. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. In this segment, we want to talk about who owns your kids. But before we do, I want to finish up where we were on the galloping populists. This is the EU executive branch, the head of the European Commission. That's the executive branch of the European Union. This is Jean-Claude Juncker, who also came into some criticisms up on Drudge Report. Is Juncker drunker? There's a lot of debate about people saying he said, oh, no, I just have a silly walk. You know, I guess he's attended that Institute for Silly Walking that John Cleese had. He said, I'm not really drunk. I don't really, and Hillary's not really sick, okay? But he did coin an interesting phrase, I thought. He got up and he decried the galloping populism that is causing an existential crisis for the globalists. We'll take that. There's a global Paul Revere movement that is out there, and I think that's great. We're warning people what the globalists are doing, and people are waking up, just as I mentioned in the last segment. Australians are moving, and there's a movement that is gaining momentum in Australia to dump the United Nations. You know, this is how bad it is for the United Nations. They are scraping the bottom of the barrel. They are desperate. We got Juncker saying that it's an existential crisis because of this galloping populism. And here in America, we see that Obama is so desperate that he's turning to John Kasich for help to sell the TPP. This is a meeting going on today, according to The Hill. John Kasich, former Republican presidential candidate, and in case you didn't notice, he was so milquetoast. You may not have noticed him. He was that guy that just kept showing up at the debates between Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, even though he didn't show up in the polls. He didn't show up in the election results, but he kept showing up at the debates. John Kasich, former Republican presidential candidate, will show up again. He's going to be at a bipartisan meeting of globalists on Friday at the White House to tout the benefits of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You know, it's worked out so well for us. We should have another, NAFTA. Yeah, it's just great. Just great, isn't it? We should have another one of those written in secret by multinational corporations. This one will have a committee that will be international in nature, and they will be able to define which countries will have which industries and to what extent will be allowed to have an economy. Okay, so let's just turn that over to some unelected people that we don't know anything about. You know, just like pointed out earlier, I guess it was about a week or so ago, I learned it for the first time, that on the New York Fed board, you know, the Fed, that private organization that manages our economy and decides when the economy is going to go up and when it's going to go down, how much money they're going to print to stimulate the economy, or they're going to withhold it, or they're going to raise or lower taxes, or rather interest rates. maybe taxes too. But they make all these choices, okay? Most of that's coming from the New York Fed. And on the board of the New York Fed, we've got the Turkish CEO that runs Chobani Greek Yogurt, and he's not an American citizen. Lee Stranahan of Breitbart's been camping out in Twin Falls, Idaho. I talked to him on the 4th hour about 10 days ago about what he was doing, and he said, yeah, we couldn't see that he was an American citizen, even though he's on the New York Federal Reserve Board. So the Federal Reserve is not federal anymore, as we always say, no more federal than Federal Express. It's a private organization, and not only that, but the people on it don't even need to be Americans to set our foreign policy. And so Lee Stranahan called his people and said, is he an American citizen? We want to get the record straight. Is he an American citizen? And the reply was, no comment. No comment on whether he's an American citizen or not? I would take that as a resounding no. Okay, so today we've got Obama, desperate to get this TPP deal sold, is going to bring in the big guns, Kasich. And he's going to be there with Michael Bloomberg, with former Treasury Secretary under George W. Bush, Hank Paulson, and other bipartisan globalists who want to turn your economy over to unknown globalist billionaires. You know, the same anonymous people that wrote this thing in the first place. And the Kasich came out and said, I'm probably not going to vote for Trump. Probably not. We'll have to win this one without John Kasich. But it'll be a struggle, but I think we can do it. I think that John Kasich is basically one of the most irrelevant people. Why he keeps getting press here, I just don't get. Okay, so before we leave the UN, before we leave the globalists and move on to who's going to raise your kids, this story, and it was covered by Ashley last night on the Nightly News. We covered it about Kratom, okay? And the headline from the Washington Post, I think, says it all. The DEA wants to ban another plant. Think about that. The DEA wants to ban another plant. Where do they get the authority to ban anything, especially a natural plant? All right? Now, yes, we can concentrate things. We can take a grape and we can make very concentrated wine or other spirits out of corn, other things like that. Okay, so yeah, I understand that. And I understand that alcohol was a bad thing, and also understand how alcohol prohibition was a total failure. It made everything worse, including addiction. People started selling more concentrated forms of alcohol because of prohibition. We had the rise of organized crime. We saw all that. The war on drugs that we have in this country that was created by the United Nations has been going on for 45 years. It has created far more negative side effects than alcohol prohibition did. And yet we continue to go down that path, okay? We continue never to even ask why we needed a constitutional amendment to ban alcohol. Why did they need that? We have 2 amendments out of about, 23, 24 amendments. I'm sorry, I don't know. But about 10% of the amendments are about alcohol prohibition. One of them creating it, the other one overturning it. Why? Because the federal government had no authority. If you follow the Constitution, if you understand the 9th and 10th Amendment, it says if you don't expressly have this authority, you don't have it. Okay, if it's not expressly given to you by the states, by the people, you don't have it. You can't derive it. You can't expand the government in those ways. So they had to pass a constitutional amendment before they could ban alcohol. And yet now we have a regulatory agency, the DEA. These are not people that we even elect. These are bureaucrats passing laws, unelected representatives. We have legislation without representation. That's what all these bureaucracies are doing. Legislation without representation. One of the things that Donald Trump said he wanted to do was to get rid of the EPA Waters Act, or basically says all your water belonged to us. Okay, they took control over all water, and they say we own all water now. Okay, they don't have the authority to do that. They don't have the constitutional authority to do that, and they should not be writing the laws. That should be done by the Congress, and yet they abdicate that authority to the bureaucracy. So first of all, they shouldn't be writing laws. But secondly, they don't have the constitutional authority to ban anything, We let them do it because conservatives so often think, and rightfully so, you don't want to see your kids addicted to harmful substances. But you have to understand that it is a spiritual issue. It is a psychological issue. It is a medical issue. It is not a law enforcement issue. I don't want to see my children addicted. I don't want to be addicted myself. That's why I never did drugs. That's why I don't drink, okay? So all you people, every time I talk about this, you want to say, oh, you're just a pothead who wants to smoke. It's like nothing could be further from the truth. I'm not the least bit interested in any of this stuff. You know what? If I was interested in marijuana, I wouldn't have any problem getting it, would I? Guess what? Your kids don't have any problem getting marijuana in the schoolyards either after 45 years of prohibition. Their problem is that they're likely to get shot by competing rival gangs who are participating in the black market. You understand? You understand? You haven't done anything for them. Prohibition doesn't do anything for them. Okay, so let's talk about who's going to be raising your kids. There was a story on the Drudge Report from a Hollywood Reporter, a competing story between two rival films based on the same kidnapping tale. Steven Spielberg is going to be doing one, and the other one will be done by Harvey Weinstein. It's actually the exact same story. As they pointed out in the Hollywood Reporter, it's an intriguing twist to the story about a 6-year-old Italian boy who in 1858 was taken from his Jewish parents by the police so they could raise him as Catholic. And so both Spielberg and Harvey Weinstein are Jewish, so they see that and it's like, oh, okay, this is great, okay? But they look at this and it's like, look at this anti-Semitism here. They would actually kidnap a child so they could raise him to not be Jewish. And they're so taken by this story, and it is an outrageous story. But they're so taken by it that they're both going to do a movie on it and compete with each other on the same story. Now, understand that the government has done that with the American Indians as well. They put the American Indians on reservations and then they kidnapped their kids and took them to boarding schools so they would not be raised in the culture, the religion, the society of their parents. And I have to ask you, has the government kidnapped your child? Have you willfully turned over your child to the government so that instead of raising them as Jewish, they can raise them as Catholic? Or instead of raising them as Christian, they can raise them as secular humanists? Or so they can confuse them about their sexual orientation. Okay? We have a story from the Drudge Report. I had it up here on the desk. I don't see it. But first grade, they're talking to the kids, giving them a book, She Becomes He, or something like that, okay? That's where they are now. It wasn't that long ago that you had parents in Massachusetts. I remember very distinctly the case of one individual going in and getting arrested because he went to his kid's school, from he to she in first grade. That's the story right there, okay? Now, go back to this story, decade, 15 years ago, okay? In Massachusetts, they were teaching young children, first grade, that sort of thing, sex education classes, heterosexual sex, okay? Then get over the homosexual LGBT stuff and everything right now. Just think about this. Do first graders need to be taught by the state about sex? Do you need to be letting them do that as their parent? One parent said, I don't want my kid in these classes. I found out about it. He goes to the school. They arrested him for going to the school to talk to them about this. And they said, once you turn over your child to the state, you have surrendered them to the authority, to the state. And the doctrine, they actually have a legal term for it, in loco parentis, in place of the parents, in loco parentis. You can look it up. You can look at the court decisions. They said, nope, you brought your kid to school, you gave them to us, and we're going to do whatever we want, okay? This had absolutely nothing to do with the LGBT stuff. This is simply a parent saying, this is not appropriate at this age. I don't want you doing it. They weren't trying to change the kid's sexual orientation or any of that stuff. Just said, I don't want you talking to my kid about this at this point. See, that's the point. We have surrendered our kids to the state. And we have people like Hillary Clinton who want to kidnap our kids. Hillary Clinton, this story up at Infowars.com by Kit Daniels. Your kids belong to the state. She tweeted out, as FLOTUS, First Lady, that would be Michelle Obama, said, the choice in this election is about who will have the power to shape our children for the next 4 years of our life. And that's what Michelle Obama was saying. That was the essence of her speech about Hillary Clinton at the Democrat National Convention that I heard. The idea that it's going to be Hillary raising our kids. And Hillary has said this from the very beginning. You know, takes a village to raise your children. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It takes a loving parent or parents. Okay? And that's the true issue. Look at this story from Maryland. Schools ban thousands of students without government-mandated vaccinations. We already saw this happen in California. As the school year started, they said you're not going to go to school. You're not going to be enrolled as a new student or go beyond the 7th grade if you don't have a vaccination record that pleases us. So we're going to tell you which vaccinations you have to take, and even more importantly, when and in what quantity you have to take them. We're going to schedule them in a cluster so that, you're going to have a reaction, basically, which is what happened. And, when I look at Hillary Clinton saying, your kids belong to the state, I absolutely agree. They do. They tell us this all the time. The problem is they shouldn't. And the reason they do is because you put up with it. You, as parents, let them do this to your kids. Now, in California, they're saying that you're not even going to go to a private school. And presumably, somebody from California will correct me on that. I don't know if that includes homeschools, if they say that you're not, if they have a situation in California where you got to beg them for permission to educate your children at home. If it's that bad, folks, you just got to get out of there. But where are you going to go? Well, maybe Texas. Come here and fight it with us. In Maryland, students are required to receive vaccinations now for chickenpox, tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis, meningitis, etc. Thousands of students across the state are out of compliance with the demands of the state. Baltimore County barred hundreds of children from school this week after failing to meet a Tuesday deadline for required vaccinations. About 3,800 kids were without required vaccinations in Baltimore City. And this affects students in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, and then 7th through 9th grade. They have different schedules of immunization for the different levels of schooling. So, all these people who say this is essential, okay, what they're selling you is this whole nonsense of herd immunity. It doesn't hold up to logic. It doesn't hold up to science. We have seen and reported multiple times about people, outbreaks of diseases in areas where patient 0 was vaccinated multiple times. All the people who got it had been vaccinated multiple times. We have pointed this out over and over again. Vaccines either work or they don't. If you take your vaccine and it works, you're fine. If it's safe and effective, you're fine. You don't have to worry about what I do or my family. And don't try to stick us when we don't want to be stuck, okay? And when you look at the rest of what's happening, let's go beyond the vaccines. Let's take a look at what's going on with the sexual indoctrination. As I pointed out before, in place of the parents. And this has been going on. This has been a fight about what kids are going to be taught about sex and when they're going to be taught about it, who will teach them about it. So here we go to North Carolina. This is an article from North Carolina Civitas. Thanks to Carolina Plothound for putting this out. It's where I get news about North Carolina. The NCAA recently announced they will pull games from North Carolina due to that law, HB 2. And remember, that law was introduced by a convicted child sex offender, okay, to say we're going to have transgender bathrooms. He says, so this guy who wrote the article, or woman, said, I thought I'd take a look at a couple of the locations that the NCAA thinks are more suitable than North Carolina for holding games, because the NCAA is going to punish North Carolina by withholding games. So where could they go? Well, one of the places that they're going is U.S. Virgin Islands. And they have a law there where they don't ban discrimination or protection based on sexual orientation. Or you can go to the Bahamas Bowl that the NCAA is going to have, okay? And there, not only do they not have any protection for that, but same-sex marriage is illegal in the Bahamas. Yet the NCAA will go there and they will shut down the games in North Carolina. Why? Because they have to bring you to heel. They have to bring you to heel. They have to show you that they're going to tell your kids what they want, when they want, and manipulate them. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. This last segment, September 16th, 2016. And as is just pointed out to me by Alejandro, today is Mexico's Independence Day. They declared their independence in 1821. And then, of course, 15 years later, Texas declared its independence. The Texas province declared its independence. As a matter of fact, there was, I think, 9 provinces in Mexico that all declared their independence from Santa Ana because they didn't like a dictator. You know, once you start the ball rolling on freedom, it has a tendency to just keep going like that. And that really what was in play there. I thought it was interesting in the history of the English-speaking people. Winston Churchill, in talking about the American Revolution, said that our independence helped them to gain their independence from the king as well. It helped to establish Parliament as being the true government. So he said, our revolution actually made them freer as well. What we see now is galloping nationalism, galloping around the globe, people saying we're going to take back control of our country. So it's important to understand that as we look at that. And I've got some more news I want to go over in this last segment, but before we get back to that, I want to tell you how you can declare your independence from the just-in-time delivery food chain that we all live at the mercy of. You know, whenever there is some kind of a natural disaster or something, the shelves clear out very quickly. I remember back in North Carolina, we used to have days when it would snow, and it wasn't a frequent occurrence. When that would happen, the shelves would empty out immediately. You couldn't get any milk, you couldn't get any bread, there were long lines everywhere, and you weren't going to get a resupply either. But that's just a snow day, even though the people knew it wasn't going to last for more than 2 or 3 days. A couple of times we had it last longer than that where we were just outside Raleigh, but most of the time it didn't last longer than that. But you need to protect yourself for natural disasters. You need to set up your independence, okay? It's not just as a state, but you and your family. And one of the ways that you can do that is to make sure that you have a supply on hand of food in case there was a serious natural disaster or a national disaster. Have that food set aside. You can get food, or InfoWars Select Storable Food, now at a discount, 30 to 40% off. It's not going to last much longer. We've already extended this a couple of times now. This is going to be ending very soon. 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. It has a shelf life of 25 years, non-GMO, the best ingredients, all made in the USA, all packaged in the USA. Take steps now for your independence, for your family's independence, to provide for yourselves. Take responsibility for your own life. Also, we have a sale on Super Male Vitality at InfoWarsLife.com. 20% off. That will also be ending very, very soon. 20% off Super Male Vitality at InfoWarsLife.com. As Tim Kennedy was saying when he was talking about his upcoming fight at Madison Square Gardens, he's found that to be transformational in his workout regime, and he's in a heavy workout. I think he said he had to lose 25 pounds in order to compete in this thing, and I'm looking at him as like, I wish I was that thin. I don't have, I don't see where he's got 25 pounds that he could easily lose, but he's going to do that. And one of the things that he really relies on is Super Male Vitality. He said he's found that to be very effective. You can get it 20% off at InfoWarsLife.com. Now, we're out of time. Just at the time, I was going to tell you about how the idea of liberty is forcing 18 girls into a single-stall shower room. This is not in North Carolina. This is in Minnesota. As pointed out by the Heritage Foundation from the Daily Signal. This is a guy that is constantly going into the girls' locker room and showering. He's twerking, grinding, and doing other sexually explicit actions. But the Obama administration, who thinks they own your children, is saying there's nothing you can do about it. There is. You can get your kids out of school. Join us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Take control of yourself. Take control of your family.